was Joyce. Second, Kevin. Any changes or discussion items around that? No? All in favor? 7-0. So to some of the highlights of the night, we have a couple presentations, recognitions. Our first on the agenda is Dollars for Scholars Award winners, and I'd like to invite up Angie Kettle and the other board members, Dollar for Scholar board members, to make the presentation.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, press the button. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the board for allowing me to take a few minutes to represent Dollars for Scholars. My name is Angie Cattell. I'm the current president of the Fairport Dollars for Scholars chapter. Tonight, members of Dollars for Scholars board and myself are here to present the annual honor award. This award is given to recognize individuals and organizations who contribute, enhance, and support the goals of Dollars for Scholars. We could not be more honored than to award the 2019 honor award to Jim and Renee Zombo. In the early 2000s, Renee was a counselor assistant at Fairport High School Guidance Library. At that time, Renee helped advertise scholarships to available students, assist students through the various application process, and assist in making sure all the documentation that was required was provided. During that time, Renee went above and beyond her duties to work with Dollars for Scholars after hours to make copies, sort applications, and made helpful suggestions in order to streamline the process. From 2004 to 2014, Renee was a Dollars for Scholars board member. As such, she was an integral part of the scholarship committee and made contributions to our program as it continued to grow. Renee took the lead in organizing the recipients for the award assembly, amongst many other tasks. In 2014, our parent organization, Scholarships America, dictated that all scholarship applications had to be done online. At that time, going from a paper application process to an online application process was an enormous project. Renee no longer worked at Fairport High School, was no longer on the board, but took a lead in helping us transition to a new way of doing things. She wrote protocol directions for students who wanted to apply, met with the guidance counselors to work with them through the new process, and did a lot of troubleshooting with many of the glitches that occurred that year. Jim was the behind-the-scenes guy. He was the athletic director at the high school and always had an interest in and was supportive of the Dollars for Scholars program. Jim was always sincere in offering his service. He was instrumental in helping us reorganize our location for the awards ceremony when we outgrew one of the larger classrooms, but were not big enough for the auditorium yet. Jim suggested the gym. He arranged the setup, recruited athletes to help set up and tear down, and did much of the behind-the-scenes planning. It is hard to measure the impact that the Zombos have made to the Fairport student community through their various levels of service in our district. From the athletic program to the guidance program to shaping and growing students that benefit our community, we are grateful. On behalf of the Dollars for Scholars board and myself, we are so thankful for your efforts and support as it has sculpted us into who we are today. We're extremely pleased to present the 2019 honor award to both of you tonight. You want to come up? And if the members of the board would like to stand that are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee and Jim. Thank you. Congratulations. To travel around in my professional career as well as just with other school districts, and sometimes I've asked about Dollars for Scholars. It's impressive the impact, not just in our school district, but then I think statewide, national. That's huge. And so thank you so much for all that you do and the board as well. Thank you. Our next one is Start Here Middle School and High School Artists. We're going to have the presentation and recognitions done by Maureen Nupp.
So, most of us know this is Arts in Education Month. We've seen the plays. Starting Thursday, we'll see the work of the artists because you're going to be displaying. You guys are very busy. I'm looking at where the teachers are. Okay, they're very busy getting things ready, but already it's been happening. I'm here to present something called Start Here Middle School and High School Art Exhibition, but before I do that, I'm going to ask all of you who know you are here because you were in this, would you students please come down? Teachers, would you also come down to be recognized for the work that you did in finding these gems? So if there's any students here who are here for an award, please come right on down here. We want to see you. We want to put you in camera. We want your grandparents to see you, just in case they can't be here. and then I get to read the good stuff. Okay? All right. So sooner or later there will be handshaking taking place. Okay? Oh, yes. And they have their stuff. So the winners that are here have their stuff. Are the rest of you going to be presenting as well starting Thursday at the Fairport Art? So we will see your stuff. If you don't see it now, check out the Parrington Square. This is me with a personal plug for that. So here we go. Each year, art teachers in the surrounding area have the opportunity to enter 2 pieces into an annual exhibit held at RIT. The show is highly competitive. Space fills up quickly. Art teachers that wish to participate must mat, frame, and deliver the work to the RIT campus. Once all the work is received, it is juried by a panel of representatives from each of RIT's College of Arts and Design schools. The newly renamed RIT College of Art and Design possesses schools in illustration, medical illustration, photography, and ceramics, just to name a few. So, the Start Here exhibit, sadly, featured work from students in grades 6 to 12, but it was on display last month, January and February, in RIT's Bevier Gallery. So we have missed it. We will get a chance to see it anyway when we have our own program. And we are fortunate to have 3 students who won awards and others who were participating in these who won the awards from Fairport to participate. So I'd like to ask first, congratulations to Anna Nguyen. Anna won an award from the School of American Craft and Ceramics Award. And can you show us what you have? Anna? Oh. And this is a chameleon ocarina. Yes. I'm good. I read that, pronounced it. I like that. And congratulations to you. Thank you. Okay. Lydia McNally won from the School of Design for New Media, and hers is a marker portrait called Alive. So there it is. Well, at any rate.
You got to get creative.
You got to get creative. Here it is. All right, well, congratulations to you. Thank you, thank you. Francesca Strawberry Beal from Martha Brown won for the School of Art the Young Artist Award. And hers is Red Foxes. It's a ceramic sculpture. Come on up and let us see it, please. Very, very nice. Congratulations. All right. And the others who've been chosen by our schools to represent them are, I just have these names here. Ellison DiVincenzo. Okay. Oh, nice. Very nice. Thank you. We'll pretend you have an extra hand. Nice job. Nice job. Hannah Slaughter. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay. Natalie Riley, an oil bar painting. Thank you very much. If you didn't see it, it was an oil bar painting, but we'll be seeing it later. Okay. For computer graphics and colored pencil on paper, Sophia Stutz. Okay. Dragons. Abigail Messner. Very nice, very nice. Wait a second here. There you go. Clay Susical Gargoyle. Oh, this is Helena's painting. Helena, is it Helena's painting or your name is painting?
Helena.
Helena, congratulations. A clay Susical Gargoyle. I like it. Very nice. Amanda Linenbrink. Soft Pastels. Amanda, congratulations. Thank you. Maya Woods.
Hi.
Oh, hello, Maya. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Xavier Van Buren. Oh, there you go. Xavier, congratulations. Pastel drawings. Okay. I'd like to congratulate all these incredibly talented students for all you have done, and the teachers as well. I don't know everybody to point to who they are, but thank you for everything you do for art and with our students, and particularly for the things we will get to see later this month. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Now moving on to our more standard parts of the agenda. Now is a good time if you need to or want to not stay for the rest of the meeting, right?
Please don't go.
We're exciting to watch, but
Something I said.
must be. Although this is one of our favorite parts, Will, we wouldn't want you to think otherwise. Our student report from Will Hughes, if you'll come on down.
So, the last time you guys met, I was unable to attend due to some rescheduling from the snow, unfortunately. I was at sectionals for swimming. So speaking of sectionals and sports, that's where I'm going to start. And that's because all of our winter sports are done now, that the spring has started. And our teams did phenomenal this season, with many trips to sectionals and some to states and nationals as well. And not only did the teams perform, but the entire school performed well, cheering them on in the red zone and making our presence felt at every game or meet or anything that happened. Our cheerleading team won sectionals and was able to compete at states and then at nationals this past weekend. And our bowling team not only won sectionals, but then went on to states and won that as well. We had a relay team and 2 individuals from the men's swim team go to sectionals, win, and then go on to states where they placed 8th in the relay overall in New York State. And our boys hockey team had a tremendous season with a hard outcome at sectional finals, but they fought for the entire game, and nonetheless they had an amazing run at the Brick. And moving on from sports, last week our school had its musical production of Fiddler on the Roof, and the feedback not just from the teachers and parents, but the students in the school from the teasers and from the actual production over the weekend was phenomenal, as they all came to see the performances and pretty much packed the house every single time. And I would have to agree with them that the production put on by the drama club was just stellar and incredible. And the amount of effort put into such a production takes months and multiple hours a day, and all the students just worked so hard for it, and they did a great job. And then, as we said Thursday, we have the art show coming up, and I encourage you all to go out and see the tremendous artworks, not just from the students up here, but all over the district, starting from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. And unlike any other art exhibit, this one's free, and you get the same experience and the same type of art because it's all just so amazing. And lastly, I have what is happening on next week. In all of my years in Fairport, Brotherhood Sisterhood Week has definitely been my favorite week. It beats being a state finalist in soccer my sophomore year even. This week is just one of the weeks I'll never forget for forever. And it's what I think shows Fairport's true colors and sets us apart from any other school in the state and country and just all over the world, because we try to reiterate how much Fairport is one community, and this week really shows not only that we're a community, but a family as well. And so with this week ahead of us, with our days like our Outreach Day and our Unplugged Talent Show, if you get a chance to go into one of the classrooms, it'll blow your mind how the high schoolers interact with the first or second or third graders, and just the amount of energy and excitement that each one of them have going into those classrooms is tremendous. And so that's really all I have. It was a lot, but yeah, just I can't wait for next week. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if any bells, but I remember being new to the community and hearing about Brotherhood Sisterhood Week and not quite understanding the excitement around it. But after all these years, it's been consistent, the excitement and just the power of that week. I'm glad you brought it up. And unless you experience it, people don't quite understand what an awesome event that it is, or week that it is. Thanks. So the President's report, I plan on opening this up a little bit, but we spent, as well, 4 of us, 7 of us know, right, going to Albany. On Advocacy Day, I just heard a recent, I didn't recognize the term, what, Tin Cup Tuesday? Had you heard of that before? And indeed, there were a lot of tin cups out that day, right? We were joined by about 9,000 other people in Albany. And met with the state education department, not all of us individually, but as the group, we went with other school board members from Monroe County and the new education chairs. And so I thought I would ask others who attended if they'd like to say a few things or their impressions and feel. It is interesting to be there with 9,000 other people, because in some ways you think we're all probably there for the same reason, asking for more money or other things. I don't know that our message ever was necessarily more money, right? It was in terms of allowing us the ability to really make decisions based on our local situations. And indeed, more money will help do that, but it was also some of the flexibility to return, if you will, back to us. And I thought we were clear on that message. We never once came out with dollar values or anything to say this is how much more needs to be thrown into the budget. But it was indeed about giving us flexibility, giving us the ability to kind of control our future more. So what did others think, and those of it in attendance or those who didn't have questions, right? But Joyce, Damon, Maureen? Yeah.
Well, I will say, you can be proud of Fairport, right? Out of 12 board members from across Monroe County, 4 of them are from Fairport, so we dominate those advocacy trips for sure. And when we meet with politicians, they hear Fairport a lot. They know where we're from, and they know what to expect, and they take us seriously. What I would say is that the politicians, especially the Republican politicians, look very tired. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Their parking spot was moved, unfortunately, and I feel really bad for them. But anyway, they were dejected. The aides were on top of it, which every year I'm impressed with the level of awareness of the issues that all the aides have to the politicians. At the last meeting that we had, and I think you were there, Joyce, with the Senate Education Chair, and I've forgotten her name, but she was very impressive, the aide that came in and spoke with us. And I was hopeful that they understood the issues. I've seen the draft budget proposals from the Senate and the Assembly, as well as the governor, and I think that it appears that they heard what we were asking for in terms of cap relief and excluding some items from the cap and some of the specific things around transportation and so forth. So I'm optimistic from that perspective. I'm not optimistic that the comptroller came out a couple of days, or the day after we were there, and projected revenues to be down. So it's all part of the process, I think, we go through every year. But from my perspective, it was a good trip. It was worthwhile. It was a circus-like atmosphere, though, when you're walking through that corridor, and the Assembly's over here, and the Senate, and the SED. It was just farmers, and you had healthcare workers, and you had different religious groups all appealing for certain things. So there was a lot happening at this time in Albany, that's for sure. So that's my comments.
I think the most encouraging thing was at SED, where we had the discussion on APPR, which we've been going for years to discuss and try to get that piece of assessing teachers not by student test scores. And finally, that seems to be on its way. We still don't know. No one would give us, it passed both houses, but no one knows if the governor would sign it. So, but it's one of those things that we've worked on for so many years and seems to be coming to fruition, but can't count my chickens just yet. SED is always an interesting visit. They're always very well informed, and they listen to us and they inform us, and so I always find that very beneficial.
Yeah. I went to the governor. I was with you for some of the meetings. There were 8,500 people scheduled to be in Albany trying to lobby that day. So lines were interesting. So not all of us were able to go to meetings, or you had to decide, do I walk into a legislative meeting 20 minutes late? No. That would have been a little rude, so I didn't go to all the places I would have liked to, but still the governor's office was cordial, knows the issues, and had heard previously from the superintendents, had heard previously from from New York School Boards, New York State United Teachers, and many of us are saying the same thing: do the right thing for education for the kids. Whether it's there is money that is owed, getting a formula that could make sense would be nice. They didn't talk about that. They didn't promise anything, and they just understood that that's the issue. And I think that's the best we can help for at this point in time. And as you said, Joyce, talking about how to make the state now has to fit into the Every Student Succeeds Act, the national legislation, and how are they doing that? How are they being fair to the opt-out movement if that continues, and why it should or shouldn't? And it was an interesting conversation. I think we were heard, but I don't think we presented new ideas. It's just, you haven't done this yet. Can you please be listening to us and taking that baby step kinds of things?
That was at least what Damon referenced was somewhat gratifying, though, is, yes, we repeated it for multiple years. Sometimes it takes that long, right, and we understand that. But at least when the one-house budgets came out, the Senate and the legislative, we thought, okay, those multiple years have paid off. Now, we don't know if it will come through. Obviously, we're in the throes of watching the negotiations. I guess watching is not the right word, since it's typically behind closed doors.
Well,
but
the other thing that came out new this year, the issue that came out new this year had to do with transportation and busing. And do we really need the kinds of seatbelts that they're proposing? Do we really need some of the things that the changes that the legislatures are hearing that we want? But we don't think we want those things they say we want. So there's sometimes when you have some new conversations to be held, and it's always interesting in those areas too. So we do have an issue in this area and throughout the state for getting good bus drivers. That's a concern everywhere in this county. Because I'd gone to a previous meeting on transportation and the issues there, and other issues that impact our costs and our labor issues. So it's interesting to see how the whole thing plays out, but they seem to be surprised that we didn't want to have more legislation about bus drivers now, and whether or not we want, and here's my favorite, cameras on our buses that will aim at all the cars that go by. So if your car goes by and you're speeding, we will have a record of it. And they thought we would like to prosecute you. And it's like, no, we're not really in the law enforcement business. We have enough things to do on our own. And they thought it would be a nice moneymaker. I think we said no. I know we said no, but whether they heard that is a whole other story. So we'll see what sort of new, interesting ideas somebody else has for the legislators. But that was the newest idea that we did hear there.
So we don't want to depend on that for money making.
No. So.
I think the overall climate that I got was that people would not be surprised if we did not have an on-time budget this year. The overall tone was that we may not have an on-time budget this year. There's disagreement among the House, Senate, and Governor. There's some power plays being with housing in the city, housing controls, and other political trade-offs that people are making, and they think that the budget may not pass on time. So, I think we're okay. I don't think they expect it to be 6 months late, but I don't think they expect it to be on time either. So.
No, that's a good point. That throws us off in our budget process. Matt knows that all too well, right? But we've had history, right? It's been a few years, but there's been.
Really the major thing that I think that we talked about was removing certain expenses from the tax cap. Certain expenses, like the tax cap is 2%, or usually lower than 2%, but somewhere around 2%. But our healthcare costs, our retirement contributions, transportation, a lot of those costs are outside of our control, and they're going up much faster than 2%. So if you can just do basic math, if your revenues are capped at 2%, but your expenses are going up in the double digits, it's only a matter of time before you're in a position where you have to start cutting program. So I think advocating for removal of certain expenses from the tax cap was really an important conversation that we had over and over and over again. And what we tried to say is we understand the intent of what you're trying to do. We understand the accountability that you're looking for. And with the things that we can control, you can expect accountability, and I think we're doing a good job. But there are many things that are large ticket items that are outside of our control, and we want those removed from the tax cap. So that's what we're hoping for.
Any questions, or people who didn't get to attend, wish you all could have been there? It was a great day. It was, although hectic, it was good to see those many people show up for various reasons and advocating.
I was surprised that going up and down the elevators wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Because the photo shots are on the stairs, right?
Yeah.
Maureen?
No, I just wanted you to be heard.
Oh, right.
Excuse me?
I
Okay.
turned your microphone
Oh,
on, so you could
sorry.
be heard. I'm nice,
Thanks.
sometimes.
So Brett's already reading the cues, right? Our superintendent's report.
Tony's racing. Well, it looks like everybody talked about what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But I think that speaks to how aligned we all are. You know, I truly, you know, every month that I've come up here for the past 3.5 years, if, you know, the message may be the same, but I feel like it's the very first time. I feel so much gratitude to be working on behalf of the vision and mission of the Board of Education. I feel incredibly honored to be serving and working with our incredible staff and the leadership that's provided to all of our staff and our students so they could be the best they could be. And I get the pure joy of seeing our strategic plans and our vision and our mission come to life. And it's overwhelming. I'm humbled at all the great things that occurred. This afternoon, this made it into the clip. I was with a group of ENL students. I go there monthly. Caitlin Greeno and Mandy Minsterman. Laura Sispinski created this with a group of students. We have 176 ENL students that we service in our district. And we talk about, you know, wanting to serve and help these students be the best they could be. Lots of resources are dedicated to support our students. We have 136 of those students who receive service who we gladly serve because of what we're trying to help them be the best that they could be. But right here's a quick little clip. We won't play it all, but I just wanted to get a flavor. It's Martin Luther King celebrating Black History Month, and they did a rap of Martin Luther King. Now remember, these are students who are fairly new to the United States. They've been in the United States less than a year, sometimes within a year or two, and trying to help them understand, read, write, listen, and think, and this is the ultimate form of literacy. Tony? Again, we'll just play a chunk of it. Little volume, Tony?
Dr. Saint, he liked to sing. Giving speeches was his thing. Morehouse College was his school. That school was really cool. Coretta's cut was his wife. She and 4 kids were his life. MLK, just like a preacher, helping folks like a teacher. Black, white, equality, black segregation and the nation. Black, white, equality, segregation and the nation. Black, white, equality.
Tony, can you stop it, please, Mr. Exon? Thanks, Tony. And I'll share the rest. This will be posted on our website, but I'll share the rest with the Board of Education. If you take a look at the ideas that they were, processing, they were talking about segregation. They were talking about advocacy. They were talking about this idea of freedom and democracy. And they were doing it in a way, and they were internalizing it. We take it for granted, but it was a powerful representation. It was a powerful representation of this commitment that we have to serve all of our children, and it is a joy to be a part of it. It was a gift, one of the many gifts that I see. And I think our board was talking about this slide, and I know that our teachers went and advocated as well with local representatives, and it was about foundation aid. It was about the tax cap. I was fortunate enough to hang out directly with local superintendents. There was 2 or 3 of us who met with Rich Funky personally, and we talked about foundation aid. We have not received, now, it's just not Fairport, but I'm speaking about Fairport. We have not received approximately $82 million worth of fully funded foundation aid. Now, if you take a look at foundation aid, we are a $132 million organization. And, you know, we rely on these dollars fully funded. Again, $82 million we have not received. We're about 80% funded. So we're asking them to talk about the formula and being able to make sense of why does one district get X amount of dollars and another district get another amount. And we might be like districts, but we get completely different amounts. Nobody can really explain the variables associated with that. And I was meeting with Dan Fuller. He's the Deputy Secretary of Education for SED. And he was not able to give me, or our superintendents that we were meeting with, you know, a straight answer on the formula. We're still waiting to have that next conference call. But you see the local levy. If you take a look at Fairport and many of our Monroe County schools, but we rely a lot on our local tax levy. We have unfunded and underfunded mandates that we're happy to oblige, happy to make sure that we can give our students wonderful experiences, but we don't have the ability. Now, it flies in the face of democracy that our residents can't make decisions on their own, and that we need a 2% tax levy limit to be set. When we would much rather let it be up to our voters. But since the 2% tax cap is here to stay, it sells, it polls well, we're asking for exclusions. For example, for safety and security, for mental health needs, for special ed needs. And the list can go on to where we can get exclusions to support all the great programming that we're accustomed to and have high expectations here in Fairport. STEM night was incredible. You know, for the past 3 years, I was attending this as a district level administrator. I'm proud to be a part of it. But as a parent, it was amazing and breathtaking. The kids were full of all sorts of energy, live, hundreds, if I would even venture to say, you know, thousands of our residents and family members were coming to Northside, and it's been a great affair for the past several years to talk about science, technology, engineering, and math. And exhibits like this are occurring in all of our schools, but this was worth showcasing. Our NASA Hunch program, wow. All right. High schools united with NASA to create hardware. All right. Think about that. We have 2 incredible teachers, Donna Himmelberg and Vince Stornello, who lead this class. And it is a multidisciplinary class, and it's exactly, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are creating hardware to actually be used by NASA. The science, technology, engineering, art, and math are alive and well in Fairport. We have 4 FHS groups chosen to present their prototypes. Yes, and you should hear them speak. It is intense, and it's deep, and it's highly technical, and I don't understand it. But it's a joy to see them be passionate about it. This was a big one, New York State Championship. We have so much to celebrate with our interscholastic sports, but our bowlers are New York State champs. And everywhere I go, I'm wearing my Fairport colors. Our bowlers are being recognized and celebrated, just like a lot of our athletic teams. It's an integral part of our experiences. And we're starting the spring season. I'd like to congratulate all of our winter athletes on a great season, and our coaches and families as well. This was a powerful activity that occurred at Martha Brown. It was the Black Storytellers League of Rochester. They shared stories of kindness, perseverance, civil rights. All students at Martha Brown had an opportunity to participate in this incredible event. Staff had an opportunity to interact with the storytellers. I'm really proud to be a part of that event. And it fits into what we're trying to accomplish, is to create this level of awareness throughout all of our school community. And I know that's always been a board priority when I was a building principal until present. Odyssey of the Mind. There was a regional event. Now this is an event that's supported by many of our parents, but it's so well attended and we're so well represented. Our schools came to life. It was a great activity. Monroe County came to Fairport, and it was a great showcase of, again, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and music. A great multidisciplinary activity, the way education is supposed to be in our schools. We're hosting that. 9 of our teams advanced to the states. As I think Will was saying and our artists were speaking about, we were showcasing our annual art show, an incredible event. I highly recommend that you go if you've never been to the Parrington Square Mall. You have a child who has pieces in this exhibit. It even makes it more exhilarating. And I'm looking forward to seeing opening night occur in the next few days, and that will be at the Parrington Square Mall through, I think, the first week of April, as it says right there. Again, it takes a level of commitment to make sure that we are prominent in all these areas. Bye Bye Birdie was performed by Martha Brown in February. Willy Wonka, an incredible performance in March by Minerva DeLand. Fiddler on the Roof this past weekend, as Will was speaking, and this next weekend we have the Oxymorons. It's a play written by our own Chris Baruto, English teacher, and I know that JP will be up and excited for that last performance to round out the month of March. As we were talking about, we are constantly looking at ways to communicate and do a better job communicating. We are looking at the Transportation Center project. This is just an update, one of many updates as we go and build and show progress on all of our strategic initiatives. So in the near future, you'll be seeing updates like this that are attached to our website that speak to educational programming, that speak to fiscal sustainability, and with all the wonderful things that we have going on with facilities planning. I'm not going to do a deep dive into it, but it's a progress that walks the community through important points in our strategic planning. And I'm looking forward to continuing to build upon all these pieces, not just one particular area. I can keep going and going and going. It's such an incredible part of what we do. We talk about making a difference in Brotherhood, Sisterhood Week. We talk about intergenerational connections. We take it for granted because we do it every single year. And it comes across seamlessly, but it's incredible planning by many hands throughout our district, led by our leaders at the high school and Deborah Tandoy, who's our assets leader. But this is something that's, Will is a highly competitive, highly successful student athlete, and he says he remembers this. He says this is his priority. This is part of the board's commitment. This is about meeting students where they are. This is about making sure that we create safe, healthy, supported, and engaged, and challenged learning environments. Brotherhood and Sisterhood Week, I shared with the board this past weekend the activities, and I'm sure you'll do your best to be a part of all the great things that are occurring in Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. We're going to be talking about facilities planning, so I'm going to put that off to the side. We'll be having a lot of conversations, but I think it's worth noticing that for the past several months, if you've been paying attention, coming to our workshops at these meetings, we've been focusing on facilities planning. And I don't want to get too deep into it because we will be having many conversations about our safety. We'll be talking about the building condition survey. We'll be talking about a comprehensive plan to focus on a cost-benefit analysis of merging Minerva's land and FHS and renovations that are associated with these initiatives. There'll be a very important community discussion we'll be continuing to share this on March 26th for the community, all about facilities planning, in particular the cost-benefit analysis of a potential merger. Now, a potential merger is not going to happen next year. It's important that we recognize that. Lots of planning, lots of organizing. We're a good 5 years, 6 years out having this come to fruition, but it takes a master plan. And it also takes an understanding of, discussing and understanding the costs and benefits of such a merger. Again, 2 community forums, one at FHS on March 26th, 7 p.m., and the other one will be April 3rd, 7 p.m. at Minerva DeLand in the large group instruction room. Again, rounding out March Madness, Fairport style. It's been, again, a great joy to see all these things, and I look forward to April. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brett, if I can, I know the board comments are to the end, but everybody's gone by then.
I got it.
So I wanted to give it one thing. Will, and you had great updates on all the events that have been happening in the district, and they've been awesome. One thing you missed was the robotics team on Saturday.
Yes.
This weekend
thank
at
you.
RIT.
Yes, true.
And my wife and I try to get down there, and it's crazy. I mean, the play, it's like a professional wrestling match. There's just people
Yeah.
everywhere and loud crowds, and it's impressive to go to the pit and see the team working and looking and analyzing success and doing beta testing and retrofitting, and then they actually compete in this ring in the middle of this chaotic environment. I don't think they did as well as they wanted to, but they go on to Cleveland next week.
So I appreciate that.
Yep.
And if you look on my calendar in my office, it says add a slide that corresponds to this.
That's why I'm here.
However,
That's why I'm here.
maybe that's why you didn't clap. No,
Yeah.
but again, this is a board priority as well. Dollars are directly associated in our general fund that support robotics. As we talk about future planning, we'll be talking about robotics and how we can make that a part of the high school environment. Right now, we have to house it at at Martha Brown, and it's great. But that is quite the event. Lots of positive energy, and it showcases the idea of educating everybody and meeting people where they are.
Yeah, dedication from the students and dedication from the staff and dedication from adults in the community to really help these kids out through the process. There's marketing, there's design, there's testing.
There's mentors that
all
they
kinds
can
of things. So
learn from.
it's
It's
good stuff.
quite the showing. But
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up.
Did you have the Masters coming up?
So I was just going to say, I know it's not comments as well, but I've been writing down everything we've heard. We're not halfway through the agenda. I know that probably makes some people, but this is what I've heard, and I think it goes to one of our board goals, which is making sure, or trying to do everything we can through budget and supporting that children have a connection, right, to their school, that they're excited to be here. And so we've heard robotics, Odyssey of the Mind, NASA, Hunch, E&L activities, Brotherhood, Sisterhood Week, arts, drama, musicals, sports, and there's still other things. So I hope we're achieving that goal. It's still what are those falling through the cracks? Who are those, and how do we still get them to be excited to be here?
I would say that I missed a lot, right? And we put a lot of things up there just now, but I would agree. I think I missed, there's so many things celebrating, so.
Downside of reports, though, is you make highlights and you miss others, right?
I'll be here afterwards to talk about it.
Thank you, Brett, and everybody. So, to the way we fund this, right, equally as exciting, Matt, if you'll give us our treasure and investment update.
All right, good evening and thank you. Tonight we have the Treasurer's Report for the month of January 2019. Beginning general fund cash balance of $67 million, receipts of $10 million for the month, disbursements of $9.7 million, for an ending general fund cash balance of $67.3 million. Of the $67.3, approximately $59.2 is invested in a mix of T-bills, ICS, and CDs, about 88% of the total cash balance there. So, thank you.
And that's what you said last month, I believe, 88%.
Same 88.
So keeping it at that level, great. Looks like we're having board doc challenges.
Matt, just for your information, I read the treasurer's report when I was reading it over the weekend, and right now it's not showing up, so I'm not sure if there's no executive content here. There's no administrative content here. So when we get a chance I mean, I know we're going through this thing that's a glitchy thing,
Yeah,
but I'm
it's
just saying
under-
that was in administrative content, and I did read it.
It's under
Here's
the
the good news, man. I didn't have
or
any
the
answer, any
consent
questions.
calendar.
Oh, okay.
But I wanted,
Okay,
that
so
Ariel,
it's down below.
It's
down
in the
below.
consent
It's down
calendar
there.
area,
Yep,
under treasurer's report, yeah.
There it is.
okay. So I just had, we put it in, I'm expecting that when you say treasurer's report, I can pop the button and there's treasurer's report, I don't have to look for it. So if we could make that happen the next time, because the question that I had was really not for you, it was for Ariel. When I read the treasurer's report, you know this is what I read. And every time, when you have a computer and you're trying to read something, and you're trying to go like this, it goes like this. Whatever direction you're trying to go in, it keeps moving. So can we please move the treasurer's report, so when I read and try to go across, I can go across? I would appreciate that. That was my comment.
Yes.
We like short answers.
I like, see, I'm reading your report right now. Ouch.
So that proves I read it. I was doing this.
I know how to switch that on a Mac. I'm not sure that helps you on a Chromebook, but.
There you go.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
There, yep.
So it brings us to the consent calendar. Again, no discussions here. We just need a motion to approve and a second. Marty, and second by Judy. All in favor? 7-0.
There's a-
We are
there's an arrow
recognizing a
there to look
donation
at.
for Brotherhood Sisterhood Week. This was a $500 donation made by the Brooks Hill Elementary PTA, which we're very grateful and thankful for that. And you hear how the youth love that, so thank you so much for the donation, but we do need to formally accept it. So I need a motion to approve. Joyce, second. Kevin? Any questions or other comments to be made? All in favor? 7-0. I've wondered if there's ever been a time where we haven't accepted a donation, but okay. Personnel actions, instructional staff. Used to tell you the page numbers, but now it's on the screen, so however long that screen is, right? You can see everything there. We need a motion to approve the instructional staff items. Maureen, second. Judy, questions or discussion? All in favor?
Well, my
Oh, never mind.
question is asking, we're not supposed to name names, but there's somebody who has a couple of jobs. I want to make sure that all the jobs are done appropriately, so that we get what we think we're going to get. So, without naming names, I just want to make sure we make that concern raised.
Right, I don't think that's under instructional staff, though, right? That you
I
might be
don't know where
referring to.
Is that in, okay, you're right.
Not that we
I'm
know
close.
who,
I'm
because you didn't name any
close.
names, but. All in favor? 7-0. Okay, athletics. Motion to approve the coaches, volunteer and otherwise. Marty, second. Joyce? Any questions? All in favor? 7-0. And then non-instructional and civil service list. I won't go through all that, the different items there that you see. Motion to approve. Maureen, second. Joyce? Questions? All in favor? 7-0. Okay, to our presentations. First on the list is the transportation capital project update. Mark?
Good evening. Mark Esposito with Campus Construction Management Group.
Hi, Mark.
How's it going today? So I'm here to give the March update for the transportation project.
He's flying solo tonight. To the left. Slideshow, there it is. Down beginning, yep.
All right. Thank you for the help. So to go over the 2016 transportation referendum that was approved, we had $11.2 million for this project. It was broken up into 3 different groupings. Our incidental budget of $1.8 million, our construction contingency of just over $400,000, and our transportation contracts are just under $9 million have been put in place. Just the note at the bottom is all the associated work with Northside Elementary School and Dudley Elementary School has been completed. And so that work is no longer showing up dollar-wise within this budget. So an update on the construction contingency budget. Of that $403,100, we have spent $207,517 of that, leaving us just over $195,000 in construction contingency remaining to date. This goes along lines with our construction project completion of 79% to date has been paid out. So with our construction contingency budget, we're tracking with 51%. So again, we're on the better side of this budget moving forward. We have spent less in our construction contingency as we have in the overall project. So we try to make sure those lines go side by side. We are tracking $91,000 worth of pending items in our issue log throughout this project. Again, even adding that dollar figure into this, that would be tracking the construction budget at 71%. So still we're on the better side of this budget overall. And then also built into our construction contracts is an additional $32,000 remaining in allowances. And this is something that as we come across different changes or items that come, field conditions in that we have to pay for outside of that, there's our allowances built into those contracts. So on top of the $195,000 that are remaining in the contingency, we have that $32,000 on top of that.
And still remaining, right? You mean
Still remaining at this point. I mean, and so all of the pending items, those are some things that we're tracking. Those are not all guaranteed monies that are going to be spent at this point, but we're tracking them to be on the conservative side going through the project budget. So a project update, things that are happening throughout there. There's a lot of finish work going on throughout the facility as we get ready to prepare in May to turn over this facility to be used in operations. We have painting and soffit work going on throughout it, drywall finishings going on throughout it, and we have photos to show of a lot of the updates that have been happening. Ceramic tile going in kitchenette and bathroom areas, all of the ductwork getting installed and painted that's going into the bus bay areas. The equipment for the bus wash is on site. It'll be getting installed. And then the stair towers, all of the emergency egresses, the elevator have been put in place. Just a lot of good things. The fire sprinkler system is being installed throughout the facility along with all of the backflow valves that are required for the building. So just photos showing of the site itself. As you can see, all the ductwork above inside the bay has been painted on the north end. And a couple looks of this with the lighting that has been installed throughout that. A lot of the overhead reels and lines that have already been installed. A look again at different ductwork throughout the areas. You see the lines, heating lines that are up there in the ceiling also. A welding wall has been installed behind there to separate the welding that will be required in the bus transportation area. This is the RPZ backflow preventer that need to be installed. That is the reduced pressure zone. This is so your water that you guys utilize on there cannot be sucked back into the public community water. It's required by code to have this installed in the facility. Fire sprinkler system throughout the building up to New York State building codes that are required to have fire sprinklers in all new facilities that are built. This is something that this entire facility has been sprinkled. Completed staircase throughout this. The finishes that have not been installed throughout it yet, finished paint, but we have poured all the pans in both staircases so we have access going up and down on both sides of the facility now. The new elevator is installed. It has not been inspected yet, but all parts and pieces are there and going to be up and running here this month in inspection so it can be utilized. The upstairs transportation office area. Again, another look throughout this space up there. The ceiling being installed, ceiling grid will be going in there. All the above ceiling inspections have been completed by the architects and engineers throughout the space. The driver's room on the second floor. And just a couple different looks throughout that. You see the soffit through the middle. This is operating partition, so you can separate the driver's room into two different separate rooms for different training purposes. So look at that folding wall for the driver space. Kitchenette area in the second floor for the office areas. We have restroom tile that's been completed, and those are the fixtures there that have already been set to date throughout the space.
So that's just like the high schools.
Yes, so the same concept, the architects brought over those same type of finishes here to keep it consistent. Moving
Upstairs
forward.
and downstairs?
Yes. A look at the main entrance that's been installed here over the past few weeks. And just a look at the completed siding of the building from the exterior views. So all of our garage doors have been completed, all of our windows have been installed in the dormers. The building is weather tight at this point and wrapping it up. Any questions?
79%, we remain on schedule overall?
Yep, everything is going well, and with the weather getting ready to break, because everybody needs some spring coming, we'll be able to get out there and wrap up some of the stuff around the site, so we'll be able to access buses into the facility once we want to turn it over and become operational.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
What's the, I know you've told us before, but the schedule for the demolition of the older building?
It'll take a few weeks to get turned over
Okay.
into the new building, everything out of it,
Right.
toward the end of May, beginning of June, to bring down that
Okay.
building.
So that transition time between the old building and the new building, obviously the old building's functional right now. The new building will become functional. That's, a lot of stuff has to move from one building to the other.
Correct.
Is that going to happen over a weekend?
Oh,
or-
no, they'll happen over a couple of weeks to make
Yep.
sure that everybody can
We were
maintain.
wondering what you were doing next weekend.
Well,
and,
yes.
David?
No, bring some kids.
No,
right?
we know it's going to take a 2 to 3 weeks for that process to happen. There is a lot of
Yep.
equipment and machinery into that existing building that
Right.
has to come with it. And then there's also
Right.
new stuff that's being delivered to help make sure
Okay.
those offices are set up and ready to be operational as
But
they
they're-
come in.
they-
Equipment and technology in itself
Yep.
is something that is going to be a task to handle.
Okay. They're going to be doing their job at the same time.
Correct.
right? So.
Yes.
We have that all planned and.
Yes, that's
I mean, I
being
know you
coordinated
do,
with
but I
Pete and
just-
Pete out of that building, so
Okay.
there is a lot of work.
Yep.
And then, so I know with the talk of the website that has been up in this meeting, how you mentioned, also Brett mentioned, to get some of those old updates, we've gone through and assisted the district in putting together narratives of what we've done here in the presentations each month to help that, and taking some of the photos from these presentations to upload onto that website. So we're going to continue that process as we go through the completion of this project and any future stuff that we have to deal with, too. So, thank you very much.
Thank you to you and your team.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
So if I can do this without formally amending the agenda, I see we have Chief Farina here for our safety audit. Just going to rearrange quickly and flip him up next on the agenda rather than make him wait around.
So I think it's important to recognize when we talk about our strategic initiatives, and if you were looking at that one particular slide that I was speaking about relative to our facilities planning, it was to make sure that we did a safety and security audit. The chief, through our partnership, last spring, we talked extensively about what that would entail, and for the past several months, he's been working with our building leaders, our safety coordinators, going through all of our buildings. He's not completely done, but we thought it would be a good idea just to give a progress update on, what's happening in our schools with safety and security relative to your audit. Thank you, Chief.
Great, thank you. Thanks for being here. When Brett first approached me on this, he said this would be a very small project. It would only take a couple hours.
Do not listen to that man.
Apparently, it's not.
I
the
do my
case.
own math, I think it's been said. Mr. Young?
That's all we do on the board as well. It's just a couple hours a month.
Perfect, perfect. So I noted with your project here that there was no space for a Fairport Police substation. Was that in the works, or is that coming, or?
Darn. Forgot about that.
Well, thanks
So
for
you
the
can deal with our
opportunity.
traffic tickets.
What's that?
So you can deal with our traffic tickets.
Sure, sure. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to update you on this ongoing process that was supported back by this body in early or late 2018. Our goal and our mission for this initiative was to evaluate the current state of safety security protocols for the district in conjunction with the physical review of each school building, the facility, as it pertains to its security measures. This has been accomplished to date by Fairport Police, Monroe County Sheriff's Office, assisted by Deb Miles, and all the management staff at each building, which have been outstanding to work with. We've done comprehensive walkthroughs of the school. We've also followed up with whiteboard sessions, so we've had an opportunity to get all those that are involved in the school, each representative from each discipline, to be part of that discussion. So not only do we see and observe areas that we think are in need of some security upgrades, but we also get feedback from all those folks that are involved at the building level as well. The review has been within the context of the most widely utilized safe school assessment checklists that are used throughout the United States. Today we've assessed Brooks Hill, JP, Jefferson Avenue, Martha Brown. We are scheduled next week to visit Northside Dudley, and then we're going to finalize our review with the high school, which will probably take a little extra time to do that. We also are going to incorporate busing, transportation, as well as athletics in our formal review, and then evaluate also the district office in Balmer Place as well. Our focus is not to turn our school buildings into a prison-like environment, but to identify gaps in our safety and security protocols to ensure a safe learning environment for all. Preliminarily, we've identified a number of facility enhancements that would offer some target hardening options as well as cultural changes to allow for all to be invested in our security safety protocols. Our strength in this district is the prevention and restorative process known as the Behavioral Intervention Team that allows for a research evidence-based threat assessment procedure that utilizes a multidisciplinary team approach to those who are shown a proclivity to targeted violence. We are the first district in Monroe County to adopt this, and now we are being emulated by all those around the county and outside the county too. So Canandaigua, Greece, Spencerport, and East Rochester has recently come on board. They want to talk to us about actually doing something over there at their district as well. Just some general observations I like to go through. Obviously, there's going to be a very detailed report to you at some point in the month of May. But there is, from what we are seeing so far, a need to expand the installation and monitoring of video at all the schools, underutilized, to say the least. The classroom doors have been a key entry. Key control has certainly been something of concern in the past, so we're looking to hopefully move to a fob entry system using identifications in the future. Some concerns have been brought to our attention regarding the single point of entry, enhancements that are similar to those as you see in the high school, a secondary mechanism to check people as they come in, visit the school during business hours, displaying IDs, escorting visitors throughout the school. We are recommending parking permits for vehicles that are parked on school property for staff and faculty members. Panic alarms for the front office staff, something certainly we recommend. We're also seeing in every school propped open doors, windows on a routine basis, and there are notification and alarms for that, just a protocol to address when those situations come to light in a more expedient fashion. Also, the text classrooms should be locked, hazmat cabinets locked, some just basic safety issues. And again, it's more of a cultural thing with everybody is trying to get into that security mindset. And the more people get invested in this, the better off that we're going to be as far as a security and safe environment here. We've been doing a lot of work with the kitchen folks, the staff there, identifying utensils, making sure they're inventoried and locked up. Identifying a chain of command protocol for each building when the principal's not there, who's in charge. So coming up protocols for that. Staff monitoring of arrival and departures for students, limiting access points to the school in the morning. Looking at radio system enhancements. Also looking at sporting events, large assemblies, coming up with operational plans for those events. to ensure safety and security protocols are in place. So it's a well-planned, well-managed event. Better protocols for community use of the buildings. We're seeing often our buildings are being used by the community members that may not necessarily be affiliated with the schools, and what security function they bring or should bring with them when they do use our schools during those events. Fencing, parking lot layouts, those will be brought out through this assessment. The use of frequent tabletop exercises as a training tool. Looking at social media software to monitor keywords that may be being accessed by computer.
Who would do that monitoring, Chief?
There's software programs out there, and Tom does some of that now,
Okay.
but it's just to enhance that to
All right.
to use its best technology for that effort. Training for custodian sentries on suspicious activities, suspicious persons, specifically after hours. That's been requested oftentimes through the whiteboarding session. School resource officers has been brought up time and time again from those in the buildings as a potential for police officers in the schools. The See Something, Say Something has been working very well to ensure that that is properly marketed to everybody in the district. And then some software enhancements that we're looking at too for tracking students during emergencies, relocation, reunification. So those are just some of the very general, yeah. Just, you know, more of a 50,000-foot view, but the specifics for each building are packaged and presented to the superintendent and to the principal so they can look building specific, but the overarching report will bring out what common trends we're seeing throughout other buildings district-wide.
And those common trends will help feed our building condition surveys, potential conversations about future projects and aid ability to maximize those opportunities so we get it at its best, most effective and efficient price.
We're not inclined to recommend metal detectors or x-ray machines. I think that's overkill. The district culture is really changing, more of a safety and security paradigm that is owned by everybody. And the more we have buy-in from that perspective, I think it'll be the easier to really deal with safety and security. The focus is really, again, on the preventative intervention and restorative efforts moving forward for those people that may start to tend towards that targeted violence path. In addition, we're looking at school safety plans. We're reviewing those to incorporate necessary changes in that as well as part of this process. So we'll provide more specifics as we move forward with the final report, as we finalize the audit. It's important to note the quality of involvement and effort with this process by all involved. It's been a pleasure to work with such dedicated personnel in this district who are truly looking out for the best interest, educationally, safety and security-wise, for all of our students, our staff, faculty, and community members. So it's been a very good opportunity for me to interact with them, and the professionalism in the school district is second to none. So that's where we are so far. I hope I didn't get too much into the weeds, Superintendent, and basically we'll get more specifics to you as we move forward.
One of the things we talked about in Albany a few weeks ago was state funding for armed resource officers within buildings, and I don't think we came to any conclusions, but I would be interested at some point, you know, in your report to really hear your recommendation around that in particular. I think we all have our views, but I think you're the expert, so.
I'd be happy to provide that in the course of that report.
Great, thanks.
Partnership is strong and unique, and I'm proud of the work that we're doing, and I appreciate you always being accessible. We are continually communicating with you. I know our administrative team uses the resources that you bring, and our community benefits from it, our students benefit from it, and we're benefiting it from your great expertise and your teams. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
And I'd like to thank you, too, for your participation in the Monroe County, or in the Fairport CPAC Committee, the Chemical Prevention Advisory Committee. We always have something to give us information about what's happening in Fairport, what's happening locally throughout the county, and thank you very much for everything.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Okay, back in order then, our instructional budget.
Before I jump into this, and I'm glad we do have a little transition time here, I really want to firstly thank Mr. Stevens and his team. Incredible command of what needs to occur with our budget, making sure that it aligns to our goals. I really feel that we're all in good hands and better for the stewardship that you all provide. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank one of our newest team members for the interim, Mr. Crum, Mike Crum, a colleague and someone who's been in human resources for a number of years, is filling in ably and providing a lot of leadership around staffing and human resources as we transition to our next assistant superintendent for human resources. But Mr. Crum, really appreciate the level of expertise and certainty and predictability you've brought to this process. You came in at a really challenging time, and you're really helping us fill the pieces and put forth a quality budget. Thank you. I'd also like to thank our administrative staff and our lead teachers. Without their leadership, boots on the ground, making sure that we're getting reliable information, making sure that we're communicating with the staff involved in the building. That takes great leadership, and I'm proud to work with all of you, and I'm grateful for the stability that you bring to the process to make sure that we can put forth a budget that is right for our community. This is the instructional budget. It's the draft number 1, and we'll be talking about the instructional budget and our revenues associated with that. Now, all those notes of appreciation are important, but it's incredibly important to have a vision, to have goals, and I appreciate the board's commitment to making sure that we had the goals up front. We were working through this in November, more so getting more effective, more efficient, and being able to identify priorities. And I've always said that the budget tells a story, and where we allocate our dollars speaks to our priorities. And I'm not going to go over every single budget or goal here in our budget, but I can say to you that we proudly can go back to these goals that have been processed extensively by our Board of Education to make sure that we understand what the priorities are, and not only do we understand them, but we are responsive to those priorities. I'm going to start out by talking us through the beginning of this project, this report, talking a little bit about the instructional budget, the expenditures, and then Mr. Stevens is going to come in and talk about how we're going to pay for it all, which is something that he's really good at.
Just open up front, I'm sorry to interrupt your flow, that's what I do.
My flow.
So, but I would say the board's goals that you outlined here, they really came from the DAC process that you helped us put together. So the feedback that we got from the community around things that are important to the district in the key areas, that's really where we derived our goals from. So it's all part of the process, but it has a lot of community input.
Thank you, completely. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit as well. Educational priorities include focusing on the whole child and developmentally appropriate practices K-12, continually trying to define that, making sure that resources are placed in the right areas so we can do whole child the way Fairport does whole child. Allocating resources to support social, emotional, and mental health and changing needs of our children. Number 1 priority, the board completely understands that we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs from a social, emotional standpoint, so optimal learning can occur and we can create the right environments. Making sure that our strategic initiatives are met, and you'll be hearing about how we're doing that in this presentation. Our long-term objectives are about fiscal sustainability, making sure that the children who have not come to our schools today have the same promises, the same guarantees that our children of today experience, and that takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of collaboration, so we're all understanding what our sustainability responsibilities include. We're always talking about efficiencies, cost containment, and being transparent, and making sure that we're doing all we can to protect our investments here in the district. The first part of our budget, or the first part of this presentation, is going to be, you see it and highlighted there, it's the instructional portion of our budget. It's the largest portion of our entire budget. It represents 69 million. You'll see that it's a 3.9% or 3.98% increase from year to year. And we're going to walk you through those pieces. Enrollment has been a big conversation. We feel very comfortable with our enrollment projections. Originally, enrollment was going to be a little bit more drastic. We were using an older enrollment study. However, even though we have experienced decline in enrollment, we are starting to level off. Numbers, if you take a look at those numbers, 400, 411, 404, 436, 444, and 410, we have been graduating classes of 500 and 500 or more. These numbers are starting to level, and the numbers that you see over the next several years will range anywhere from 430 to 468. And that provides a lot of consistency. That provides us the ability to do appropriate planning as we move along. 5,600 is probably about where we're going to level off to. And we were, like I was saying, we're looking at numbers in 5,300 through an older analysis. But nonetheless, we still have experienced declining enrollment, and that has impacted our community on many levels. We have class size priorities. The Board of Education has made it a priority to really protect our K-1 to our primary grade levels, to make sure that those students are there one time. We have great windows of opportunities that we need to make sure that we get right. So that's why class sizes are developmentally appropriate from our perspective, and we feel like it gives the students and the teachers the opportunity to interact constructively as they develop foundational skills and engage in the practices of developmentally appropriate programming here in Fairport. These numbers are consistent. They haven't changed from last year. As we continue to experience declining enrollment, we should level off with our class sizes. You'll see in this budget, there's minus one section at Northside. All the other buildings have gone up one section, again, to support our initiatives of K-1 class sizes. I can follow up with you, but I believe right now it's a fourth grade section. All right, I can confirm that. Class sizes for secondary are between 24 and 26. We are very aware of the anomalies that take place in programming, from classes like art and technology and family and consumer sciences. And we realize that those are special considerations. If there's safety or space limitations or capstone opportunities, these obviously do not apply. However, these bands that we have been using give us some guidance. It's never perfect. It's not a perfect science, especially when you have an incredibly dynamic organization like Fairport High School, with the amount of electives and commitments to giving students as many opportunities as possible. We do our best to stay within these figures. If you take a look at some of our major staffing changes, again, to address class sizes, you'll see 2.0 addition to our overall budget. Through our CSE process, that's the Committee on Special Education, is requiring that we add staff for special education purposes. We're happily able to meet students' needs in that realm. As we learn through talking with staff, talking with parents, even talking with students, the mental health needs of our students are of utmost importance. Again, this is a tribute to the board's understanding on the importance of taking care of self first, and we'll be looking to add 2 behavior psychologists that will be able to support our students at the elementary and in some cases our secondary levels. We have 2 instructional coaches for STEM and humanities. We have been talking about all the great things that have been happening in science, technology, engineering, and math. We have programming in our humanities with aligning ELA standards and social studies standards. This is at no cost to the district. We are fortunate to have title dollars that are federally funded, but it is a staffing addition, but we are using the grant that the federal government gives us to support these yearly funded positions. So it's part of the overall, but it's not a part of the overall cost of the district. And it's directly aligned to our educational programming priorities. If you take a look at expenditures, instructional administration, that's up 2.39%. General instruction, that's up 5.1.6%. Special education is at 3.25. You'll see a decrease in our occupational education. That's at 3.72%. The instructional administration, the curriculum and instruction directors, buildings and grounds, staff development, that line right there is where the instructional admin line is. My red line isn't working, but those are expenditures from the instructional end of the budget. You'll see an increase in the library, media, instructional computing. That's commensurate to the board's commitment of putting instructional technology into the budget. Instead of relying on our reserves, there's a commitment to fund our use of instructional technology in the budget and saving our reserves, so when we do need to have upgrades or use it, the reserve will still be there. So that's why you'll see that 8.01% increase in that line. Overall, there'll be a 3.98%. You'll see the student or the pupil services. That's where you'll see the behavior specialists that we're looking to add. That's the 2.47% increase.
So, sorry to back you up, just the library media instructional computing, right? There's 2 more years in our plan to roll that in. Is that, so we'll see that for a couple more years? Or
Yeah,
is it?
this has been gradually weaning off.
Right.
2 or 3, but we've been gradually weaning off our reliance on the reserves, because once that reserve's gone, it will be gone, and the board made it a priority to say, let's put that in the budget. It was a district advisory council. I think would support that as well, based upon the need for instructional technology. Sure.
And just to add to that money is actually allocated within a BOCES budget line, so those purchases will generate BOCES aid in the year after. So it's the second year where we've increased the budget by the amount of not relying on the reserve anymore, or reliance on reserve, but it is going towards BOCES aidable expenses.
Right, it's the revenue side not shown here, but right, it was just part of our longer-term plan. I know the 8% gives people heart attacks, but we're purposefully doing that, trying to preserve some technology reserve for significant changeovers when we need to do that. Right.
And we see the benefits of our student activities and athletics. Those are lots of the things that I talk about, and the importance of co-curricular activities, giving students opportunities beyond the school day. That's a 2.6% increase. Our expenditures from general support, Board of Education, you'll see a decrease of -6.94%. Superintendent, personnel, finance, and public information official, there's a 2% increase in that line. Central services, you will see a 14% increase, 14.69% increase. That speaks to the district's commitment to putting dollars in the budget for maintaining our facilities. If you take a look at the District Advisory Council, the recommendation was, the expectation is that we invest our dollars up front and share how we're going to be using those dollars to upgrade or maintain our facilities. And you'll see a line item of $800,000 for facility upgrades, mechanical upgrades, building maintenance pieces, and of course, a communication system of $130,000 to make sure that our safety and security with our communication system is online and fully operational. Special items pretty much includes our BOCES administration fees. It also includes our liability insurances. It's the cost of doing business. That's a 5.9% increase. Some natural occurrences there. The transportation budget, I think it's important to recognize that, we transport 430 students to private and parochial schools. We have obligations to make sure that we get provide transportation to them. There's fuel and oil costs that we need to be prepared to manage throughout the year. Tutoring transportation, special education, we happily provide shuttles for our students who have unique learning needs so they can further their program beyond Fairport. And more than ever, we've had to contract transportation. We have a shortage of bus drivers. It's not a Fairport problem. It's actually a national problem. And we've had to add additional dollars here to support those contracts so we can get our students to and from and support our transportation commitments. You'll see that we have approximately we have bus purchases of approximately $1.25 million after trade-in values. We're on an approximate 10-year replacement cycle. We'll be replacing 12 buses, 7 71 passengers, 4 28 passengers, and 1 23 passenger. It gets to a point with the amount of traveling that we do that it's more cost effective to get a trade-in value, just like you do with your own personal vehicle. And these are the ones that we will be trading in. There's a contract transportation, as I mentioned, of $1.2 million to support our obligations to support our students' transportation to BOCES and other places throughout the county and region to fulfill those obligations. Those bus purchases are aidable at 70% on the dollar, 70 cents on the dollar, excuse me. And that's important to recognize because for the dollars that we spend, we get maximal aid allowances for that line item, which Mr. Stevens, I'm sure, factors in on the other side of the budget, of course.
Just to expand on that idea, I'm sorry, but repairs to buses are not aidable. Is that correct? So if we have an aging fleet of buses that require more maintenance, that's money we don't get aid on. So
we do.
Repairs rate.
Repairs are
they are aidable.
They are aidable. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
At the same rate?
But the number of staff you have too, I mean, you have to manage that up against the number of staff that you're bringing in to fix those buses too. So it's been.
Yeah, and that also weighs into ensuring that we don't have buses that are down when we have trips taking place. There's DOT inspections that take place of which put buses up for time. If there's a breakdown or something goes wrong during a pre-trip inspection, those buses could be out for the day. So, the older a fleet becomes, the more repairs take place over time. I mean, just in that case. But, our staff does a fantastic job maintaining the buses, and, inspection rates are terrific overall.
Thank you. There'll be no change in the use of our community pool. Lots of students, community members use this, and it's at no additional change for this budget cycle. New York State retirement contributions. The employee contribution rate is estimated to decrease from an average contribution rate of 14.9% to 14.6%. So you'll see a slight decrease there, and the same thing with our TRS commitment to employer contribution rates estimated from 10.62 to 8.86%, and you'll see that in the line the ERS and TRS lines of decreases in the next slide that I have here. You'll see that workers' compensation claims have gone up, and that's based upon experiences or the utilization of those particular, of that particular benefit. And you'll see a significant decrease in the other benefits, and that would speak to some of our decline in staff over the past several years. And there's an overall decline in that particular line of minus 1.09%. We have debt coming down, which allows us to experience a decrease in 8.4%. There's library debt that's coming off the books. And the debt schedule that I know that, we were talking about in audit and finance, we will be continuing to talk about, continues to fall off. And that's why you'll see a decrease in that line item as well. Overall, you'll see a total budget increase of 2.48%. Once you put them all together, you get to see, again, the educational programming priorities. You get to see the commitment to facilities and maintenance as we build this budget. Mr. Stevens is now going to talk about the revenues.
Can I ask one question, though, about again, just to summarize for me, that on the expenditure side, part of the general support line item is moving some of the cost to the district away from unallocated fund balance into the budget, right, so that we can predictably
This came
quantify.
from the District Advisory Council interest to make sure that we know that we're maintaining our facilities, that we're protecting our investments. We have a district planning team. This was a recommendation from the district planning team that made strong recommendations of, hey, let's see where we are protecting our investments, where we're taking a look at the building condition survey that you've been spending a lot of time on, and let's put them right into the general fund, and that's what you see there.
So it provides more predictability and more clarity around what we're doing.
Yeah. So we could speak about how we are protecting our investments and making sure that we're being cost effective, when we're able to replace or continually service and maintain for the useful life of mechanical items.
So this is the first year that we've done this change. I would expect that next year on the general support line item, we wouldn't see an 11.3% increase. It would stabilize in terms of.
Well, I think that's up to the board's discretion.
Yep.
That was a board expectation of 1% of our budget, and we did a little bit less than 1%. So that's where we got the $800,000. We have made a commitment to install, I would like to say, operating 21st century phones. Our phone system was in the 1990s. It was experiencing lots of malfunctions and lots of service. So we've been transitioning, and that you'll see $130,000 of additional to support that capital improvement.
So I support that process and the mechanics of what we're doing. I'm just looking at the logistics of the budget, where we're seeing an 11.3% increase this year. It's because this is the first time we've done this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It's the first time we've put it in this side of the budget.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Completely.
And, right, and so it doesn't seem like what you're saying. I think we're not going to increase it every year, but we have the goal of up to 1%. We did 0.8.
Right.
But now that's in there, 0.8. If we
Right.
want to add 0.2, we
Yeah.
might be able to do that, but it's going to be in the
Yeah.
figure from now
Yeah,
on.
next year, the percent change is based off of this baseline that we
Yes,
have
right.
established this year. So.
Yep.
Yep. Mr. Stevens?
Great. Good evening. Thank you. Again, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned earlier, to all that had a piece in this process. Really, from business office to, building administration, staff throughout the district, as well as the board and Brett here throughout the process, and DO administration. So I just like to recognize and say thank you for all of the work that folks have done there. The next piece we'll talk about will be the revenues. Two of the largest pieces of revenue that the school receives are state aid and the tax levy. As Brett mentioned earlier in his report, it really makes up most of the revenue for the district, with the district tax levy being the largest reliance of revenue, and then state aid after that. Other pieces, sales tax we receive from Monroe County, then other revenue, charges for service, facility use, admission fees, and so forth. And then the last major piece would be the reserves and fund balance. So we'll talk about those as we go through the presentation here. Again, the property tax cap, I'm not going to read through the entire piece here, known as 2%, with exclusions could be more or less than 2%, depending on what exclusions may exist in each separate district. So we'll go through that calculation here. As you take a look, it starts with the prior year levy, and there's several factors that we have to take into account. One of the major ones that came about this year for Fairport is the tax base growth factor. That's set by the state. That's a number that comes into play regarding the growth in the tax base. So it catches up in terms of if there was growth previous years, so factor that into future years for the tax levy limit. So overall, after pilots and exclusions, again, you see a drop in the exemptions, primarily related to capital debt fall off overall there. Buses also fall into the exclusion piece, less the bus aid we receive here. And overall, after all of those pieces, it nets to about a 3.27% tax levy limit for 2019-20 for the district.
I think one point came out this week, Matt, that illustrates the misnomer, if you will, of the 2% tax cap. There was another district I was reading about that within the limit, the legal limit, their levy was going up 14%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because
Possible,
of the exclusion, yeah. Right, it's possible. But it's just a little bit of a misnomer of what that limit means.
Right. Yeah, the 3.27% would still be
within the tax cap.
Within the tax cap legislation. A big piece of that could be related to debt. So if debt came on and revenue wasn't there to offset oncoming debt, that could play a big portion.
So it is possible, and I think this has happened not to Fairport, but other districts, that through the combination of these variables, you can actually have a negative tax cap.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially.
Yes.
And that was one
Without
thing we advocated for, that be removed, so it's not possible to have to decrease your revenues. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Last year, the tax base growth factor as a comparison was 1.0099. So you can imagine that, it's a big piece to be at 1.0236. That's larger than it's been since I've been here.
Right, large as I've seen, but that's also then showing what's come online, if you will, all that construction
Yes.
that's now actually livable or other usable, right?
Correct. Yep. And then the 2%, the allowable allowable levy growth factor at 2%. That's essentially what's capped. So that's what's capped at 2% or CPI. CPI was actually over 2% the previous year, so we're capped at the 2% there. So the current revenue for state aid is based off the executive proposal. Again, we know the House budgets recently came out, and there'll be a back and forth there before the budget's adopted, if on time, in April. Foundation aid in the governor's proposal was about a 0.7% increase, so $163,000. Foundation aid is the largest piece of state aid we receive for basic operating. The next piece you see would be our expense-based aids. So transportation, BOCES, building, those are formula-driven. So based off of our expenses, formula-driven for the following year, about a $292,000 increase. Excess cost aids, that would be aid on students with special needs. So we receive aid back in the following year, following expenses in current year. And then aidable materials, that'd be our hardware, software, library material, textbook, and urban, suburban, and tuition aid. The decrease you see there is primarily driven to enrollment as it relates to the instructional material aid. So it's based off of an enrollment figure. So you see a drop there of about $8,000. Overall increase in state aid, about 1.16% or $470,000.
Some of our heaviest advocacy was in the expense-based aids that you talked about, right? That it not be changed because it's directly related. It's 100% related to money we spend, a lot of it that we have to spend. And this is where the governor proposed something. I think both the House and the Senate rejected it. And theirs, it's still up for negotiation. But this is one where it just doesn't make sense. We don't think.
Correct, right. The proposal to bring it into the 11 aid categories into one services aid would hinder the process of it actually being expense-based aid, so.
Yeah. and
Yeah.
It could end up being devastating ultimately when he puts, if that happens on
Correct.
that line. But I've found it funny you used the word formula-driven. Well, foundation aid is supposed to be formula-driven, but we can't predict from year to year, even though
Right.
there's a formula out there.
Yep, yeah, we'll talk about the foundation aid, and I know Brett mentioned earlier too, in terms of what's been underfunded according to the formula. So here's a breakdown here of foundation aid. Again, the 1920 estimated, because state budget's not final. You can see just kind of up in the top, GEA dollars. Remove the slide that used to have the GEA history. It's about 4 years back at this point. So just give a summary of what the district lost when the gap elimination adjustment was in place. So $33.5 million since 10-11 through 15-16. We saw that restored gradually over the years, which you'll see down below in the chart when the aid came back. So from 15-16 to 16-17, for example, there was a $3.2 million increase, in essence, of revenue for the district. However, getting the district really back to that base formula aid, not according to the formula, but restoring the aid that was taken away. The foundation aid, if you look at the formula and look at all the years back to 2007-08, it's about $87.5 million in terms of underfunded aid. And currently for 18-19, we're about 81% funded. So it's about $4 or $5 million in foundation aid that's not being provided to the district for Fairport. And here's a chart. We'll start to notice more of the leveling off of foundation aid as it relates to the increases. The large increases in 14-15 through 16-17, that was the restoration of the GEA overall.
It wasn't a restoration, was it?
Well, elimination of,
It's all words. People
It's
talk
all-
about the tax cap, but it was money that they originally had promised and then didn't have.
correct.
And so when you restore something you promised to give to the beginning of, what is it?
Right.
Just giving my version
Yep.
of semantics.
Yes. So overall revenue for 1920 projected, the property tax about a $2.4 million increase, and this is how we're paying for the expense side of the budget for the increase. Pilots down slightly. That's just based on the current payment in lieu of tax agreement projections for next year. Those are those agreements in place through the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency, as well as the Fairport IDA as well. State aid, 1%. Sales tax and other, no projected increase there. We receive about $5.4 million, $5.5 million of sales tax. So the big piece of that sales tax and other revenue is the sales tax piece. So overall, a 2.38% increase in revenue. So you'll notice in the previous slide, 126 million of revenue doesn't equal the $130 million of budget. So how do we fill that gap in terms of the revenue side of the budget? Next piece would be the assigned fund balance and general fund reserve assignment to the budget. So we start at the top, just to kind of go down here with the overall budget of 132 million, 126 million in revenue, and then transfer from debt service funds. So we've made a commitment. This is money in a debt service fund. It's not general fund dollars. It's debt service fund that may be used to pay off future debt, the local share of future debt. So we've made a commitment over time, to budget approximately $400,000. The additional 104 is directly related to bond anticipation note premium to pay back interest. So when the bond anticipation note for the transportation center was issued, the lender had a premium offered to bring down the net interest rate, of which essentially we hang on to for the year, and then it goes back to pay off the interest. Next piece, assigned appropriated fund balance and reserves, staying flat at $5.2 million, currently projected for a total revenue and fund balance and reserves of $132 million. Right now leaves the estimated shortage at about $159,000. We're still going through the budget process, looking at pieces like BOCE special ed and others. We still also have the state budget that we would await for the state aid itself. Overall, the percent of reserves compared to budget is about 3.97%. key piece is when we talk about the assigned fund balance and appropriated reserves, the assigned fund balance needs to be a balance to come up with each year in order to support the following year budget. Otherwise, we're looking at coming up with such money before the budget's even looked at for rollover. So here's a breakdown of the reserve usage and fund balance. 3.9 million is the assigned. So essentially what that is surplus of 2018-19 being assigned to balance 2019-20's revenue side of the budget. Net transfer from debt service fund, 504,000. Tax certiorari reserve and unemployment reserve, those are both reserves that may be used to pay expenses related to such categories. It's looked at each year. If the district only spends 40,000 in unemployment, only 40,000, up to 40,000 may come out of the reserve. So it's looked at the end of each year. Then the retirement contribution reserve, this is the employee retirement system. There is no teacher retirement system reserve as it stands today, approved for school districts. So this is money to come out of the reserve to pay for expenses related to the employee retirement system.
We did advocate for the TRS, though, as well.
Yes, yep. Thank you. So overall, when you see the increase here from 5.6 to 5.7, that's directly related to the premium coming back on the debt, on the bond anticipation note. So there's really, overall, as it relates to the general fund reserves, there's no increase in the assigned pieces here. Just a chart showing the pieces before. Just to graph it, main pieces, again, property tax and state aid. Those are the large pieces of where we get our revenue. And now we'll just go through the reserves and the available reserves we have and the monies that are sitting in each one of the reserve funds. Just a little statement here from the Comptroller's guidance on reserve funds, just to talk about planning ahead and systematically saving for future expenses. We've seen that as it relates to capital projects, to be able to allocate capital building reserve dollars to offset local share there. So again, the capital reserves, we have 3 capital reserves. One's the capital project reserve or building. Then we have technology reserve, which we talked about earlier, and utilizing dollars from the technology reserve to transfer over to appropriate and general fund for expenses, and then easing reliance off of that reserve. And then the capital bus reserve. Years ago, we were able to transition off of relying on the bus reserve for expenses with the buses entirely budgeted in general fund. And these are restricted reserves, so they require voter approval in order to establish and then spend from the reserve. And here are the balances as of June of 2018. And we'll see the capital reserve come down, technology reserve, because in 2018-19, approximately $736,000 was approved to be pulled out of the reserve, and then next year it's $464,000. So again, easing that reliance back off of the reserve usage for future years. And other reserves restricted for specific purposes. We have the repair reserve, related to repairs, employee benefit accrued liability reserve. The district may use this to pay for compensated absences upon any separation from the district, whether retirement, resignation, so forth. And then we have tax cert, liability, and insurance reserve. And the district's been using the liability reserve related to legal expenses historically. So some of these reserves are used annually as we close out year end each year. And other reserves, we talked about the employee retirement contribution reserve and unemployment insurance. So the balances of these two. Now just a quick snapshot at budget history, tax levy, tax rate. Just one thing to highlight here, as you look at 2018-19, tax levy was 3.21, but there was a large reassessment in town of Perrington. So overall, the inverse relationship between assessments and tax rate saw a decrease of 4.27% in rates there. And just graphed here. Sometimes we like graphs. And then the technology purchase proposition that would be on the ballot in May as well. Again, as I mentioned before, $464,000 to transfer from the capital technology reserve for expenses on technology equipment. Again, that money is also being used to drive BOCE's aid. So combined with the increase in general fund, which I believe is $172,464, those would drive general fund aid, BOCES aid, and then we'd look again in the following year to continue to ease off of the reserve usage. That is it.
Just to highlight something, if you back up, and I'm not sure what page it is actually, but it's ultimately it's the fund balance and reserves used to balance the budget. If you look at the trend, just to point out, I think that's something that we have talked about before, is making a concerted, focused decision this year to tap the brakes on reducing the fund balance and the reserves.
Yep.
To lower the budget, or, you know, we were diminishing our use of those funds in the past, and that was causing some budget shortfalls. And this year, we made a concerted effort to hold the line on last year, so we're not increasing that. We're not increasing the pace of that reduction. We're holding to what we had last year.
Yeah, great point. As Mr. Buffum's talking about, as you see 17-18 to 18-19, decrease of $500,000 in the assigned appropriate fund balance, and then a decrease of $500,000 in the ERS usage. We held flat on that usage for 2019-20 as it related to the budget concerns.
And it was a pattern over the last few years, really, to do that, and it was necessary for long-term sustainability. But right now, at this time, we made the decision to hold off on that.
Yep, good point. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Provenzano and talk about future dates.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens, and thank you again to all those who had their hand in being a part of this process. We are looking at April 16th. Will be the final draft total budget. It's the adoption of the budget. Yes, that is smack dab in the middle of our spring break. We'll be having a formal adoption that helps us meet our timelines to make sure that we're working within the guidelines established. May 7th will be a public hearing. We'll have an opportunity to formally present the budget. May 21st will be the actual budget vote. There'll be board elections. There's 2 open seats this year from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Johanna Perrin Middle School. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, no. Okay, facilities planning, so you're not planning on sitting down or anything, Brett or Matt, whoever?
Of my friends Kevin Radmacher and Mark Esposito come forward. Mr. Stevens, don't go too far. All the way to the right. There you go. Or, yeah, from beginning, right there. Nope. No, you're in the wrong one. You
Letter D.
Gosh. There you go. Yep. Facilities planning. This is a conversation about our master plan for facilities planning. I think it's important that we recognize that we have some very specific goals and expectations around our strategic initiatives. Our strategic initiatives include our commitment to educational programming, facilities planning, which we've been talking about throughout the year, and this concept of fiscal sustainability. They're all interdependent of each other. We also have a significant responsibility to maximize state building aid through project phasing, meaning it all can't happen at once. And we need to make sure that we're minimizing and managing the impact on teaching and learning. So these are very important concepts as we move through this conversation. And I want to take people along a little history lesson to talk about where this all came from. Last year, from November through May, we engaged in a comprehensive study through the District Advisory Council. I'll be calling it the DAC from this point forward. The DAC was around three main ideas: educational programming, facilities planning, and fiscal sustainability. Now, we had over 3,000 school community members engaging in this process. Our partner was University of Rochester. University of Rochester does projects throughout the state, and they were so impressed with the amount of participation, the amount of energy and passion around our schools. At the end of the day, the District Advisory Council made recommendations about enhancing educational programming and opportunities for students. That was a priority. So whatever we do, the DAC was saying that needs to continue to occur. We have high expectations for educational programming here in Fairport. We also want to have flexible learning spaces, because more than ever we understand that this idea of 21st century learning is about collaboration. It's about being able to take an environment and do multiple different things in that environment, have multiple different disciplines use spaces to support student learning in a collaborative sense. And this idea of curricular coherence was big, making sure whether you went to Dudley, Brooks Hill, JA, Northside, JP, or Martha Brown, Minerva, or the high school, that we were aligned vertically and horizontally to make sure that we were giving a high quality curriculum to all of our students, no matter where they lived. Building safety, as we talked about. This idea of technology, yeah, I mean, we have to use a lot of discernment when it comes to technology, and you'll see that as we move along, and how social media and using our devices, there's a lot of intentionality around those practices. But the community says, we have expectations around giving our students opportunities to interact with all sorts of instructional technology in a constructive fashion. Facilities was a priority, making sure that all of our facilities were well maintained and managed, and not just adequate, not just average. That was something that rang true throughout our process. This idea of fiscally sustainable schools, making sure that our district has this concept of long-term facility management and cost containment, ideas that we needed to be intentional about. Here are some quotes from the perception data. This is over a year old, and I'm just bringing it back out because I think it's a good reminder. There was overwhelming consensus that Fairport schools were well maintained but dated. This is what over 1,000 residents or school members stated. There was not a commitment to collaboration in building design. There was little emphasis on technology and STEM education. Our community members are saying this through our forums that we had. One resident told us that for decades, Fairport has emphasized the education program at the expense of facility maintenance and updating. We have tired facilities, was the storyline. The most common responses were to leave the configuration as it is and move the 9th grade to the high school. That was a prevalent conversation that occurred through the District Advisory Council. Again, just repeating and sharing this data a year later. It's important that we keep these ideas at the forefront, because if you take a look at the things that we've been doing this past year, it's been centered around these ideas. The priorities of educational programming. 98% said educational programs. The things that we do to meet students where they are, from our co-curricular activities to our robust elective programs, 98% said that was a priority. Safety, 97%, another priority. We're addressing that through our work with our safety audit. We're addressing that with our conversations that we've been doing internally with our emergency plans. So you see lots of energy, lots of formal actions around safety planning, technology, as we've been talking about. Again, committing it to our budget speaks to making it a priority. If we say that we're only going to commit it to our reserves, the reserves are going to run out. We see that we are transitioning, putting technology in the budget because it is a community expectation. Professional development, making sure that we build systematic capacity in a consistent fashion so our students can benefit from teachers who have command and capacity in a coherent manner. That is a priority. Facilities, again, another priority, continually comes up through our district advisory council as something that we needed to be attuned to and have strategic initiatives around as we move forward. 92% said it was important to upgrade our facilities. Over 2,000 people participated in this survey, unheard of from a surveyor's perspective. University of Rochester partners would continually assert that this was a priority that we needed to keep in mind based upon our community's expectations. And there you have what we've been talking about this past year in facilities planning. This one particular initiative is to complete a cost-benefit analysis of combining Minerva DeLand and Fairport High School. The Board of Education has spent a lot of time talking about the costs and benefits from an educational standpoint. We've talked to high school staff, we've talked to Minerva DeLand staff, and it's been deliberating, looking at research, and having conversations on this particular bullet item. We're also, again, looking at our building condition survey, making sure that if there are any renovations or if there are potential capital projects, what needs to be encapsulated in those capital projects to make sure that we are upgrading our facilities, that we are making sure that we're nurturing our learning environments so they're collaborative, that they're highly adaptable and flexible and responsive to all the different needs and pieces that are occurring in all of our schools today. I'm going to transition now, after I give a little background, to Kevin Rodmacher from Labella, who's going to talk a little bit about some big concepts and big ideas as we talk about future planning and having a master plan. Kevin.
So I'm going to run through some scope items, and you're going to see some common themes, whether it's an addition or a reconstruction. And we're going to get into the plans a little bit later, but all of these pieces fall into the plan views, and we'll get to that in a little bit. SED does allow aid one time on STEM edition, so that's in one of the concepts, and that's why it's in here as a scope item to, you can leverage that and build that into your capital project and receive aid back from the state for doing that one-time addition, where otherwise a student occupancy load may not show that you need an addition or can have an addition. They will allow it for that purpose.
They will allow it at the same rate we would normally get other state aid as well, or is it even a boost in aid on that?
It's the same as every other aid piece. So you would get 24 building aid units for that, and it's roughly $18,500 per aid unit towards that piece.
And just to clarify the definition or the scope of a STEM edition in this conversation is a new automotive technology in a woodshop area?
It's a piece of the addition, yes. Yeah, so it's a flexible space, really. So it also houses automotive space and woodshop space, but also requirements that meet the needs of a STEM lab.
Such as what?
They state mandated where you're going to have science, technology, and math engaged in there, so it could be as simple as having some sort of planning space for that system, and some places where students can construct and build and plan for things that they may construct in the lab portion. So in one of these schemes, we're actually creating an addition, but also it would be taking over a portion of the current fitness center that would create sort of that classroom space that would tie into the lab space.
There will be visuals to make reference to these specific pieces, so you want to move forward?
Sure. And then, again, we're talking about STEM classroom renovation in a scenario where you might not create an addition. There is a plan for that, and we'll walk through that. Team room renovation, that's been on the list for a long time. Even from the last project, we weren't able to encompass that into the budget of the last project at the high school, but it's still on the docket. And athletics renovation, part of that is related to the athletic department that is directly adjacent to the current technology labs, and also the fitness center if we choose to go down that route. We're going to look at the cafeteria kitchen renovation. That is a way to consolidate all three of your cafeterias that are not connected today. It's going to reduce supervision. It's going to update that space completely. It's all on the same floor plate. It's a pretty straightforward way to reconstruct. It's going to allow for extra capacity for students in there, so you can have less periods of lunch. The faculty work area is also tied into that space. They're all in the same area, so we'd be looking to update and reconfigure that a little bit to maximize your use of space. And a classroom remodel, that's where we're going to reorganize some classrooms that have been converted into teacher space and try to accommodate student spaces, because you need outside windows for that. So we'll kind of modify and move those. Those aren't going away, they're just being relocated. Library remodel in one of these concepts, two of these concepts really, that is, in need of an update. You're going to see where we're going to accommodate a few classrooms to deal with additional student population there, modernize, create teacher work centers, which will allow teachers to have a centralized workspace, but also be able to collaborate with students. And the well-known science classroom renovation that's required upstairs. So that would be a full reconstruction of the science classrooms on the second floor. This is option one you've seen. This was an initial first blush look at bringing Minerva over with their student population load. We've analyzed that for expediency of the addition, which you could construct year-round because it's independent of the school building, so that's why that concept was floated. We did review that with the State Education Department, and they came back and weren't willing to give enough building aid units for us to construct that, for you to construct that at a reasonable level. So we have abandoned this idea, and we've come up with some other ideas that are more fiscally responsible for you in receiving aid. So this is just the second floor of that same option that is over with, so just running you through some history. So option two, so this is where we talk about the light blue area that's on the left-hand side of the image here. That is your STEM technology addition bump out. And the blue adjacent to that, the darker blue, is where we would have the technology classroom space.
Hold on.
Yep.
I have to catch up with where you are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you're on two, okay.
Can I laser this?
So, okay, the one, okay. There you go.
All right, see that laser?
Can you, yeah, if you have a pointer?
I do, but you want me to
Could you
hand
just go
point?
here and
Sure.
point?
I can do it. I can help out.
All right.
Yep.
Yep, so here's the technology bump out
Okay.
that we were talking about, and
Yeah.
that's what he was referring to, is you get the one-time STEM aid.
Yep.
You take a look at NASA Hunch, you take a look at our robotics, you take a look at our engineering classes, you take a look at automotive shops, that would be reconfigured into what these spaces look like. The spaces that they're using right now, NASA Hunch is in a science classroom that's sort of confined. If you take a look at NASA Hunch, it's an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary process. So you need space. You take a look at robotics. It's at Martha Brown, which is not a bad thing. They're wonderful hosts, but a lot of these kids are high school. The equipment, could be consolidated in one area. The engineering pieces. So you would have a STEM bump, if you will. Right?
Yeah, and a true technology hub, so it's all centralized there. Directly above that is the team room renovation or reconstruction that has been discussed. Thank you. And so really, if you recall, yep. Yeah, can you reach And that would really allow for the former technology space to become your new fitness center. So we'd swap that over to more of the public side, the events entry, and we'd be looking to move the athletics offices to the end, to the corner of the building, facing the fields. That would allow for observation, security, ticket sales, things like that to occur right at the end of the building, and no one has to come internally necessarily to work with athletics. As you move forward, you're going to see some more blue, so let's go to the cafeteria space. You see a fully reconstructed cafeteria kitchen. You can see it's sort of an L shape that will result and give you a lot of capacity for students to dine at one time, reducing the periods required. And the yellow that you're going to see around the plan, that's where we have teacher space, dedicated teacher space where we either work rooms or faculty break rooms throughout the plan that really allow teachers to collaborate with each other and also students, where they might be stuck in a hall or in a resource room throughout the building.
Square footage on that? Correct? Say that again? It's about 6,000. So 6,000 square footage of teacher collaboration areas.
And those spaces are just broken down right now in general spaces that would go through focus groups, and if there were supposed to be breakout spaces, smaller workrooms that the users wanted, we'll do that over time if we go this route.
And is that 6,000 just in that area?
Total.
Or including, okay, over by what's by the library? We
Yep.
haven't gotten over there yet, okay.
Yep, so if you go over to the library, let's move there. You can see we're developing 3 additional classrooms within that space, within, being responsible to not having an addition, but allowing more capacity for classroom space, but also reconfiguring that library, leaning more towards a digital side of a library space, modernizing that, and having collaboration spaces for students and staff within the blue area, we'll say the public side proper. You're going to see a lot of blue in random classrooms. You can see they're up against exterior walls. That's where we're going to regain some classrooms that have been converted over time to bring them back to general classrooms. Historically they were, and that'll allow students to come over from Minerva. You're going to see some orange, and you're going to see this in a chart later where the blues and the orange is separated between something that's related to the merger and something that's related to just purely BCS. The gym space needs some updating, so that's why that's included. That's been talked about through building condition survey over time. So that's, we'll say all 4 gyms, but it's obviously one space when you retract the doors, and then also your other gym station, which is your pool space. So we have some, it's not a wholesale, demolish the entire thing, but, it's an upgrade, a significant upgrade to the space. Then we move to the second floor, and you can see there's one classroom that kind of gets us to the count we think we need to achieve a student move. And we're really renovating the entire science classroom floor, enlarging a lot of the classrooms and making them a lot more usable for, today's teaching methods. Some of them are, the partitions between the classrooms aren't in the right space, so we're going to maximize all your square footage up there.
Important to recognize that these were science classrooms that, under today's standards are inadequate, not meeting the needs of our students and our staff. 1970s classrooms and you take a look at our technology wing as well. It's a 1970 technology wing, served its purpose, did a lot of great things there. But when it comes to our district advisory council and our expectations of the community, there's higher expectations based upon the feedback that we have from the over 3,000 respondents.
So Brett spoke earlier a bit about master planning, and that's really what this activity is. The building condition survey yields a significant dollar value, something that's really not attainable, certainly over a 5-year period, somewhere in the hundreds or multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, which you really can't deal with. So in this strategy, we've put forth a plan here that we think we're responding to all of the DAC data and all of the building condition survey items and prioritize those items over time. But the way that the state releases aid dollars to you is on a 5-year rolling clock cycle. So buildings are capped on a 5-year rolling clock. So say the spend for your roofing project that was recently completed here at the high school will refresh 5 years from its completion. So we still have to work within the limits of what each building allows you to do. So even in this project that we're showing you tonight would be economical for you to phase over time. So it would be a multiple vote process. So you would do a phase 1 and a phase 2 vote over time. So even the construction alone, I'll let Mark talk a little bit about what it would really take to accomplish this over time, just construction-wise.
In terms of multiple votes.
Yes.
As opposed to one big vote. One big vote is really sustainable or reasonable or flexible, right? So
Exactly.
having multiple votes along the way allows us to adjust if the conditions change or our priorities change.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a perfect tie into what we're talking about here. Also, over time, I hate to say it's a phase one and a phase two. It should be regimented votes over a long period of time. So, you know, the board understands and the community understands that we're going to, if we have consistent votes at a consistent dollar value, that's automatically going to keep tax consistent over time. So this is kind of a jump start to that conversation.
You know, and I'm not certainly an expert here, but several years ago, when the NIPSA convention was in Buffalo, I believe you were next to me, we sat in a best practice facility planning workshop, and they really talked about this model of providing, you know, multiple votes, multiple phases over a duration of years, taking capital or taking debt off the books and putting new debt on the books to keep the tax rate relatively consistent. You know that, Brad? Correct.
Yeah, so you're receiving multiple streams of aid over time as well. Yep.
And so the Audit Finance Committee, we just asked for on our next agenda or in the next two, to look at our debt service over the next 20, 30 years and look at as it's falling off specifically for this purpose. So we can say, okay, what are those years we need to make sure we're targeting to minimize any taxpayer increases? We can absorb it through what fell off and now add on and maintain our facilities over time.
Yep.
Absolutely. And the other piece to that is the ability to save capital reserve over those time periods. Because once you announce you're going to vote, your capital reserve, what's in the reserve at that time, that's all you can spend on that project. So you can continue to save for the following project. So we've conceptualized some ideas where we could maximize your dollar there. So you want to talk about construction?
So I think talking to what Brett hit on in the first slide about the objectives, and he just, Kevin just talked about the aidability of it and making sure you're fiscally responsible for it. One of the major things when you're doing construction of a building is minimizing and managing the educational process that's going on. And if you look at all of the areas that are colored in these plans, we're over 60% of this building right now. The blue areas are recognized at over 75,000 square feet. In the red areas between the pool and the gymnasium, some other areas, you're talking about another 40,000 square feet within this facility. To do something like that is not just turning a light switch on. I mean, that is some heavy construction that would have to go on through this, sequence properly, make sure that we're able to separate construction from occupied spaces to be able to build this throughout a sequence of events. No different than up on the second floor of the science wing, to create some swing spaces with some of these classrooms that are in there, to be able to go renovate some other areas. So that would be a process in outside of phasing two large projects, but sequencing the work throughout over multiple years. Right now, looking at it, we're a 5 to 6 year process for this construction overall. So it is a process overall that would have to be developed within the teams and the user groups and the building users themselves. So it is a major overhaul of the building in looking at it.
Just looking at this at a high level and trying to understand the floor plan, we're not touching any areas that we just renovated here.
That is correct.
If you were to put in tan colors the areas that we modified, you pretty much cover the rest of the footprint, or a lot of it, right? But we're not renovating areas that we just renovated, which is great to see.
Well, that goes into a lot of the master planning thoughts of you don't want to be touching something twice while it's still getting aided in the first 15 years.
Yep.
The state will not aid you those dollars until it's been paid off.
All right, so we did continue our study beyond this to a couple different iterations, this being option 3, which is very similar to option 2. The only thing that has changed in this plan is that you don't see an addition for the STEM lab. It does become a little bit more aidable there, but with a phased vote plan, we look to try and make up the unaidable portion of an addition with time to save in your capital reserve. So that's why 2 seems to be the most viable. You could see over where the technology is today, it remains, and it would be renovated in kind. And I say in kind in that it would be updated, but it would be in the same existing footprint, along with the athletics office. Other than that, every renovation that was in option 2 remains. This is we'll say, a tight to potentially uncomfortable fit to bring over the students. The flexibility of having that technology addition does a lot to provide adequate space to bring over the Minerva population.
So I think before we go forward, the major decision at hand is the Minerva Deland FHS question. And, that's not to be answered tonight, and I know that that's something that the board has considered for several months. We've had multiple conversations, as I have said. We've brought in different people to listen to and understand from an educational concept or from an educational mindset, what is the board's expectations around, a potential merger. And if the board decides not to have a merger, right, the next piece would address some of those DAC pieces that we know are priorities. Again, there's fiscal realities, fiscal benefits to a potential merger. We've talked about some natural efficiencies that might occur from merging the schools. We've also talked about the educational benefits. We've talked about transitions and the importance of transitions. And if at the end of the day, and that will be by the end of April, the board will make that decision. If the board says, hey, we're going to stay where we are, we're going to continue to move along, this is the next option.
Yeah, but I'd also like to talk about the start time alignment. So the options 1 through 3 allow for that, and 4 really does not, because there's no merger. So, yeah, sure.
Options 1 through 3 allow the start time initiative that we talked about a couple of years ago to be a possibility, because we wouldn't have to purchase new buses.
We would take 17 buses out of the network because of Minerva Deland. That's what it is right now. Approximately 17 buses. Adding that, it became a matter of feasibility. And options 1, which is not feasible, would allow us to have that conversation. 2 and 3 would also, but 4, we would be back at adding more buses. Yeah.
Right, so we had expenses elsewhere, right?
All right, so what you're going to see here is option 4, which is you're going to see a lot of overlap. Past there. Okay, so it's all orange, and that's simply because we're saying that there's no merger involved in this study or in this floor plan, but you are having similar scopes of work. So the recommendation for the cafeteria renovation emanated from the building condition survey and interviews, so that would remain. We would update the team rooms again, also the technology spaces, very much like what's shown in option 3. And then on the upper floor, talking about renovation of science classrooms. So if you dial that back a little bit, if you refer back to option 3 or option 2, better yet, we can pre-plan an initial project that would really not hinder your ability to either do or not do a merger at a later date. We could look at doing the science classroom renovation. That's got to happen anyway. The cafeteria renovation, team rooms and technology, potentially a pool and or the gym reconstruction could occur. We just avoid sending ourselves down a road that we're not prepared, and also know what we're looking for in the future to save our capital reserve for.
So what I do notice here in number 4 is that we're not touching the library area. And
Absolutely, yep. And that's really done.
That's really all.
We're not in the classrooms.
Again, these are conceptual drawings?
Yeah, understood.
And that really is the library is a driver because we're generating 3 classroom space within it.
Gotcha. And so the teacher workroom space that was on the outside of the library before, we can absorb all that into this yellow space here on this drawing? And
No, the workrooms would, the teacher workrooms would stay as is. There wouldn't be any needing to reclaim those classrooms.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay, because in order to.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Got it, thanks. Yep. But it's fair to say that there's a significant amount of work that has to happen at the high school, regardless of whether we merge or not.
Absolutely. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Yep.
Don't be afraid.
All
There's
orange.
big numbers here, but phasing. Think master plan and phasing. All right. So option 1, you're looking. Unfortunately, it's small writing. I don't know if you can read that. You can probably zoom in yourself.
We can zoom
Perfect.
in. Yep.
All right. So if you're looking at the blue lines, that's really related to merger items. So that relates to floor plan. Beautiful if you can look at them at the same time, but you probably can't. But the first option shows 69 million approximately. We've abandoned that idea completely. If you go to option 2, 3, you see that they're fairly close in dollar value. Part of that being the addition to construct that.
So the addition was the difference between the 50 and the 46, correct?
Yep, that's correct. So also, just to help you out a little bit, common theme that runs throughout this schedule, you're going to see some grayed out scope items right under that blue, and you see it consistently carrying over, whether it's an addition or renovation for STEM labs. It then carries over on 4 over into reconstruction. So we're still trying to hit all those items no matter what we do. You know, those are still important items. So there's some big dollar values there that you can see. And then if you get over into the orange category, those are BCS items. Those are kind of the highlights of what's in there. There's some, you know, random things here and there that aren't all captured. But that's dealing with the pool, gym, and other reconstruction that was partially through the BCS or infrastructure items where you're dealing with air handling units or boilers or other.
Okay. I was going to ask about the boilers.
Yeah.
There's boilers everywhere, right?
And also, yeah, and you continue on, the next column, which is not shown on any of the floor plans you've seen, are really dealing with building condition survey items where we've gone through a long process of prioritizing number 1 items, and that's dealing with building condition survey items at other buildings. So you can see there's a sort of up to that's next to the dollar value, because now we need to scale it, right? So whether we're also going to scale the blue items to fit it into a nice, happy budget that gets you the most aid for your dollar, leveraging your capital reserve.
And whatever the option is, this is a multi-year, multi-vote, multi-approval process.
Absolutely.
And whatever the option is, it's still a 5 to 6 year proposition.
Yep, and you would be able to scale out this work and time it in a way that we would hit the most important things, or, I mean, logistically, we have to think about how we accomplish all this work over a 5 or 6 year
Yeah, so
period.
if you're going to be spending 6 years in a construction period,
Yep.
it doesn't make sense to approve it even all at once anyway.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
that limits your ability to save capital reserve.
Right, but how would you be able to help us prioritize what?
So let Mark share a little bit example of why this is a multi-year project, and this is.
So getting into the.
Microphone, please.
Yeah, getting into the high school scope of work in itself, utilizing the cafeteria as an example, that cafeteria is going to take 8 months to renovate. Kids have to eat throughout this entire process. We're going to have to find swing space for them to be able to eat in the building someplace. At other districts, we looked at our large assembly areas like gymnasiums, the libraries, auditoriums, to be able to do that, and also need a makeshift kitchen because that's also underneath renovation at this time period. So there's a lot of sequencing that would go into place multiple years throughout that entire process.
Okay.
But it continues to go, I guess, right with our goal of fiscal sustainability. We need to look at that debt service. We need to make sure we put it on there. We can only absorb so much as individual taxpayers, and hitting the plans at the right time. I guess so it seems to work better also to sequence it then and bring it on at the right times.
And it also will leave you more flexibility, like it was mentioned earlier, with the 2 to 3 years between a vote. If something does change within the community or something else does become a higher priority, it's something that will be discussed before the vote itself. So it does leave you that flexibility.
Now, relative to the BCS items, although that's not their main discussion here, the other buildings, how much of that do you anticipate is more upfront than not in terms of where our facilities stand?
Well, and specific to that, I mean.
They're standing still. So
Here, if option 4 is the option we go with, then there's a Minerva component to this as well.
Correct.
You see that in.
Yep, so it's not included on the first 3, so you'll see consistent dollar values on those items on both of those columns till you get to the bottom. That's because things shift. So if you plan on maintaining and keeping Minerva, clearly there's some reconstruction to do, yep. So the BCS items, you know, that's also looked at. Every building has a cap, so, you know, Northside Dudley could be a later date vote because there's been a lot of expense loaded on there and following SED rules on the 5-year rolling clock. We certainly don't want to overburden that. That becomes a dollar for dollar burden on local.
Right.
Any other questions on this slide?
On this slide, no.
Okay.
Oh, I like that slide.
So as far as our timeline continues to be of importance because it gives us a good guidepost. You know, we've had our board workshop to have a preliminary review that was in March last week. Today. We're talking about this master concept, this master planning concept. Next week, we'll be meeting with staff, having this level of conversation, perhaps processing the benefits and the things that we need to consider as we move along. Obviously, hearing from different constituents. I know the board's always interested in getting a sense of what priorities are and what people are thinking. That's going to happen on the 25th, 26th. Is going to be a community meeting. The staff will be back on April 9th at 3 o'clock at FHS, and April 3rd there'll be another community meeting at Minerva DeLand. Again, just so the board can have a good pulse, so we can continue to share information. I'll be communicating portions of this forum with the community as well as we move forward, and we are on a timeline to have a decision about the facilities planning regarding the cost-benefit analysis between Minerva DeLand and FHS by the end of April. And the board will make a decision if they need to have another public meeting to make this announcement, or we'll use the April 23rd board meeting. But that needs to be determined by the board as a whole. In the beginning, I think it's just worth bringing it back to this slide right here. This is about master planning. This is not about a plan. It's about a master plan that takes into account educational programming, facilities planning, fiscal sustainability, all those things that are wrapped up in our strategic initiatives, and that the board has made an initial commitment to. This idea of maximizing state building aid through project phasing is big. And that's why, we have a responsibility to be stewards to our greater community, knowing which buildings we can work on, which ones will generate the most aid. We can time that out and sequence it, meet our needs of our district advisory council's expectations, of our community's expectations, and also minimize and manage the impact on teaching and learning. The science classrooms, it's not a one and done. It's a multi-year process. It could be a 2 to 3 year phasing process to do those science classrooms with the amount of work that needs to occur. You put the cafeteria in there, there's another 8 months. You put, putting a hub on the end of a building, there's lots of moving parts there. We want to do that in a way that doesn't minimize the experiences and hinder teaching and learning. And that's why we believe there's a thoughtful, methodical way to do that. It is wrapped up into, Minerva DeLand and FHS. So it's all big one moving, different cylinders moving together. Any questions?
Can we see option 6?
There may be as we move along, but again, I think these are just some viable options right now to consider. However, the main conversation, which I think is wrapped up in these, is that question of the cost-benefit analysis. There are potential efficiencies, as I mentioned, for a consolidation, and repurposing of that building also provides potential, and it's unknown, based upon assumptions of possible revenues that we can receive from Minerva DeLand if it's repurposed.
It's important that we remember other initiatives that we've started that are sort of hinged on possibility of this happening, like start times. So.
I appreciate your patience with this process, your commitment to this process, and especially keeping you here till 20 after 9 to develop this very important scenario or plan for the district as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Believe it or not, that wasn't our board discussion action items. That was just presentations. Right.
No action today.
Moving along.
Yes, so moving along. We have a minimal settlement resolution that we know has been worked on over the last couple of days and the weekend. And that deal has been struck, so we need to adopt that resolution. You have that before you, I believe. If it's review, we need a motion to approve. Kevin, second. Maureen, questions around that? All in favor? 6-0. I assume we noted that Judy, right, had left. Okay. First reading of board policies. Quite the list this time. The board's been busy, or the policy committee, catching up, right?
We worked very hard.
Motion to approve these, this set of first reading. Marty?
Well, is it the first?
Yes, this is the first
This
reading.
is the first reading, okay.
Right, so I'll second that. Any questions?
The only question I have, I know we talked about the policy around personal technology, cell phones. Is that something that's on the list of the policy committee to get to? I know you're busy. and
It's
I
a big
don't-
one, so I don't
Right.
know when we're going to get to it, but
Well,
I
the-
think it's going to require a lot of pre-work. We
Yeah.
want to meet with students and teachers and
Okay.
really get,
So-
I'm
so-
sure we all heard things at the high school
Yeah,
from
so what do we need to
students
do to
and.
get-
So the Wellness Committee is grappling with that right now.
Okay.
You know, we've had extensive conversations that I will be sharing with the board as a whole to get feedback from the administrative team, but the Wellness Committee, if Dr. O'Leary Sargent was here, she'd be able to speak to the work that they're doing on that policy that will directly impact consistent application of the policy.
Okay, so it's not so much of a policy edit, it's a regulation.
Well, again, I don't want to speak for the policy committee. I think they need to continue to look at it, but we do know that from a regulatory standpoint, as far as consistency, as far as engaging community and parents in the conversation, setting expectations from an instructional standpoint, from, you know, random use and how it impacts the school environment, there needs to be work done with that, as you're alluding to.
Thanks.
All in favor? 6-0. Second reading, 3 more policies here, but we've seen them once before. Motion to approve. Kevin, second. Damon? Questions, comments here?
I'll just say that board docs, in terms of policy, this is like way easier than it was before, right? Like, the policies are here.
I know, it's awesome.
It's just really, this alone is so much better, so.
The thing is,
reports
all
are-
of our red parts have to do with what the law says you have to do. We just have to update the policies to make sure we're doing what the law says you have to do.
Yeah, but I mean, I could never find the policies when we talked about
Well.
second reading. I mean, it was just.
Now they're right
logistically, yeah.
here. Yep. Okay, all in favor?
I'm in favor.
6-0. School-sponsored field trips. Again, it's right there at your fingertips. Motion to approve. Marty, second. Joyce? Questions, comments? All in favor? 6-0. Annual reorganization and regular Board of Education meeting. Can't believe we're already voting on this for July 9th. Motion to approve. Damon, second. Joyce?
This is the full day.
Full day retreat
as
followed
well.
by, yep, reorg meeting.
So
Get
it
that
is
in.
going to be the retreat as well.
What's that?
It is the retreat.
So retreat as well.
So we're doing the retreat on a Tuesday.
Yes. Is that tough? I think, was not clear in the emails going around as the date available. Good. It's been typically a Monday. I mean, it's been a weekday. It hasn't been a weekend historically.
Not in July. In July,
Not the
it's
July.
it's a weekday.
Yeah.
Because it usually butts into our evening meeting.
This has been one resolution also by NISBA to try and get the law to change at least through the 15th instead of the 11th, giving us a little bit more flexibility based on vacations, the end of the school year happens, July 4th happens, when can we all get together? But as of now, we have a tighter timeframe. So, all in favor? 6-0. Appointment of vote,
I won't be there.
appointment of vote personnel. Oh, 'cause-
Maybe I won't be there. I'm kidding.
Distractions, focus. Okay, appointment of vote personnel, need a motion to approve the list. Marty, second. Joyce. And all in favor? 6-0. The 2019-2020 calendar. Hope you've all been able to take a look at that, but need a motion to approve. Maureen, second. I'll second that. Any
Well,
questions?
you're going to be here the day before Thanksgiving?
I never am.
Never
Not
am.
going to start now.
Well, I want to ask, I mean, Brett, from your perspective, what, are there any big changes to this calendar that you'd like to call out?
There's definitely in October, thank you for giving me that platform. While the whole Monroe County is off on, I think it's October 11th, that's a Friday, we are going to hold our superintendent conference day on October 15th because we have Dr. Ginsburg, first name is Kenneth Ginsburg, who's going to talk to our staff around some emotional regulation, social emotional well-being, and social emotional curriculum. He's a renowned national speaker. We've been trying to get him on the books, so it's going to be Tuesday. We will have a superintendent's conference day. So Monday will be off, Tuesday will be the conference day. Monroe County will be back in session on the 15th. I would also like to note that we have, again, Thanksgiving. We have a 2-week December holiday, or excuse me, winter recess. That's always a crowd favorite. April break will be the second week, not the third week of April, as the state has, promised us in the past to get some consistency around that. But those are some important dates. Along with Memorial Day weekend is also there. And from an internal piece, we're looking forward to having multiple sessions that would bring teachers in before the school year actually starts, so we can hit the ground running with district initiatives. There'll be multiple professional development. Again, there's that word aligned to the District Advisory Council, tied to our educational programming priorities. We'll be doing multiple PD sessions that will get teachers in, taking care of obligations, that really promotes coherence, quality teaching and learning. So that's not on the calendar. That's more of an internal piece, but it's a good piece from my perspective.
The only question I have, Brett, came from a parent, an elementary parent, who was saying this time of year feels like the kids they just had off last Friday for parent conferences. This time it's a teacher conference, and then coming up before Easter again is another day off. And they were sort of hoping we could minimize, the teachers would have a different point of view, or conferencing time is a different issue entirely. But I don't know if there's a way to not have it feel like it's every week or every other week that this is happening. It's just part of the calendar.
Yeah,
It's
this
just part of what we
is
need
a
to do.
BOCES calendar, and sometimes they're few and far between. And like next year is that one cycle where we do have, we have a pretty interesting calendar as far as the amount of time we have for our breaks. We have long weekends in there with Memorial Day. We have the Thanksgiving piece. We also have years where Thanksgiving's not, we're not able to get the day off before Thanksgiving
right.
because the way the math works on the calendar.
Okay, all in favor? 6-0. So, resolution approving the notice of annual meeting, budget vote, and election. Need a motion? The resolution, Marty? Second? Maureen? All in favor? 6-0. Resolution providing for the submission of a proposition for authorization to the appropriation expand from the Capital Technology Reserve Fund. That is a mouthful. But again, this is part of the plan, kind of mentioned during the budget, right, this time. So, motion to approve. Joyce first, Damon second. Questions? All in favor? 6-0. And last but not least, the resolution approving joint agreement. This is with BOCES. So motion to approve that. You have the memo there for you. Damon first. Kevin second. Questions about the joint agreement? All in favor? 6-0. Okay, it's been a long evening. Board comments? Any comments?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm all
He's got his notebook there.
I'm all commented out, so.
I saw people picking up things to throw, so, okay. There's no executive session, right? It's just there on now standard piece just to be filled in, right? So we don't have one, great. So a motion to adjourn. Don't all jump at once, come on. Joyce first, Damon second. All in favor?
Aye.
6-0. Thank you, everybody.